All right. I think the first thing we have, Pledge of Allegiance, led by Karen Waite.
Please place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is a presentation by the Niels Brock students. We have a smart city presentation by the students in Niels Brock College, 15 minutes. You may start.
Yes. So, as the mayor just said, we come from Niels Brock, and we are some of the students here as exchange students, and we're currently attending St. Ines High School, just to put into context who we are. And we have this Solvang Smart City project that we wish to go over today. And we have a table of content here, which will show what we will go through in this presentation. And first of all, we will talk about the smart city a bit, then about some local sales, some sales by segment, conclusion, then we have some recommendations, then we will have a little talk about the hotels, and about social media.
Yes, and the first of all is like the smart city, which is basically just everything included. And the reason why smart cities are better is that they have a better infrastructure online and can therefore communicate more efficiently. And with having a smart city, there comes increase in the revenues on all over the city due to like more efficiency and therefore having lower costs and which equals higher revenues. And from that, Solvang will become richer, happier, and safer, which we've seen in Copenhagen after they implemented smart tools. And as I've said, more efficient business means more increases in revenue. And with this, we also want to implement better solutions for public transport, which there's a site called the Travel Plan in Denmark, which is really useful for getting to know like if there's any changes in the schedule on the public transport sector. So if one of the buses are delayed, an update will show up on your phone, and you can adjust your time schedule for it. And we also, with the smart city, we also want to monitor more environmentally friendly values, such as if we have more trash cans, we could put in like values in a system that shows like how much trash are in, and make sure that we don't empty trash cans in time spaces where there actually isn't that much trash, and we can do it more efficiently and therefore become more environmentally friendly. Yes.
And our project goal was to produce a profile of Solvang's economic output, but we found it very difficult to find data on the city of Solvang's GDP. Yeah, we couldn't find it anywhere.
The Solvang economy is highly dependent on revenues from hotels and food and beverages, which is shown as food products on the graph. and general retail is declining, and there is no measurable IT or internet economy, meaning there's no e-commerce. And then by general retail, we mean apparel stores and drug stores and etc. And food products are restaurants and liquor stores. Yeah. And as shown, food products has 41% of the revenue in Solvang.
And in conclusion, most visitors that comes to Solvang are from the Southern California, and they only stay here for the day, so they're not overnight. Yeah.
So household revenues grew 145% from 2003 to 2018. But we think that sales can do even better in Solvang. But Solvang has no measurable e-commerce or internet economy, which we wonder why, and is there a reason for this?
Yeah, and the occupancy rates for hotels average about 60%, and it's lowest in the winter months and highest in the spring and the summer months.
So we recommend that you expand e-commerce and internet economy, and that the use of internet economy to attract higher spending tourists as well, and to collect and define economy output to help decision makers make better investment decisions, such as MasterCard and Visa credit card data. And then detail by subcategories, such as who's coming into Solvang and who's leaving and what they spend their money on. And then we need more hostels like the Lansby, because they also have restaurants, which is a demand.
Okay. So here we have the hotel tax revenue by month. And what's interesting to look at here especially is right in the middle, around November, December, January, and February, the average income in taxes, they drop because you don't expect as many visitors in these months. And a way to change that would be specific different events, which has also been talked about before. And these are Danish events. These are things we celebrate in Denmark, so it would remain Danish while doing it. And here, the hotels are compartmentalized into 3 tiers based on pricing. And in total, there is 18 hotels in Solvang, offering 839 rooms. The average daily rate is $166. And then you can see how the 3 tiers, they're based on pricing. And so tier 1 hotels, which are mostly boutique hotels, their average daily rate is over $200. The tier 2 hotels, they have an average daily rate between $150 and $200. And then we have the tier 3, which have an average daily rate of less than $150. And then here we can see how much here it shows the economy of the hotels, of the different types of hotels. So you can see over here the average daily rates, and you can see that the boutique or the tier 1 hotels, they make up for 55% of it, which is a lot. And this also shows us that there is a high demand for these hotels. And they grow, these boutique hotels, more so than tier 2 and tier 3 hotels. And you can tell that here. And then these are the events I talked about. we have that is Tivoli. Most of you probably have heard of it. That's how it looks in Christmas time, which is quite beautiful, I dare to say. And then we also have the Christmas brew. We actually have a day called J Day, because J as in jul, so julebryg, Christmas brew, and there is a whole day dedicated to the launch of that beer. And here we come back to the tier 1, 2, and 3 hotels and their revenue and their total revenue. So you can see at the tier 3 hotels, their total revenue as of 2018, that was $4.08 million. Then you have the tier 2 hotels, which is a bit more, which is $4.6 million. And then you have the tier 1 hotels at last, which made almost $27.5 million. And this, like, once again, this shows that there is a high demand for these hotels and that there is a lot of potential in them. So from that, we can conclude that Solvang mostly has tier 1 hotels, or at least those are the most popular. Tier 1 hotels are also the most profitable. There is a very big demand for tier 1 hotels, of which most of those hotels are boutique hotels. And we believe that the construction of more tier 1 boutique hotels would first of all create a higher tax revenue for the city, but it will also, it would also prove to be more profitable for all the local businesses, as it would attract a bigger crowd of people. So we believe that it would be in everyone's interest to build more boutique hotels in Solvang.
Yes, and to attract more tourists, we need to promote Solvang through the social media, because the social media is like the young people are on the social media, so they will like get attracted to this. And for example, a few weeks ago, Bella Hadid was standing in front of like one of the Danish windmills with wearing a Danish outfit, and everyone was like, I want to go there, and I want to see this, and wanted to be there in real life. That's what the influencers do. They post a picture of something to promote it, and that's why we want to create an attractive online outlook, because we want people to like saying that, oh, I wish I was there to see that in real life. So.
And just to clarify who Bella Hadid is, this is a supermodel with a very large portion of followers, like several million followers on the social media Instagram. So that means that these influencers, they are people like Bella Hadid, who has a large group of followers. And when she posts a picture in front of Solvang with a little quote underneath, like, ooh, just like Denmark, or something like that, it's a shoot, it's like a big commercial, because it goes out to so many people, especially the young generations. So that's a way of forwarding Solvang to also more young people.
And for example, when you search for like Solvang online on Google, it's like the same picture, I don't know, 20 times. It's the same picture in different colors, and that's not attractive, because when I was home, looking at these pictures, that was not what like kind of attracted me to go here. So yeah, we wanted to create a more attractive online outlook.
And Solvang can definitely do that. It doesn't even look like Solvang if you Google it. Solvang is a lot more beautiful in real life than what you see on that. Thank you, that was it.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. One of the things I liked about it is it really does point out, that the boutique hotels brings, a higher spending tourist, which could also bring in more tax dollars while reducing the impact on the community. With that, does the council have any questions of the presentation that was just put up? Okay, Karen?
Yeah. So
You guys can,
when you stated that the majority of your visitors were from Southern California, the majority of our visitors are from Southern California, and that they don't spend the night, but then you presented that our hotel revenue is up 145%, that would imply that someone's spending the night. So who's spending the night?
That would be the tourists from other countries that are wealthier. No?
Okay.
Well, I think there's several things that contribute to that. I mean, and you guys are doing a great job of starting to point out some of the data and things like that. I mean, one of the factors you'll see in that increase would be, for example, Measure Z, which increased the TOT tax from 10% to 12%. That might not necessarily have been reflected in the presentation, but I think people from the council, recognizing those changes would see that some of it is part of that. But certainly, as you work on your project, you can figure out some of the political things that happen that do increase the taxes to the city, and that doesn't necessarily mean that even the occupancy has increased. It could also just be that the tax got increased. So those are all important factors to take into consideration as you guys explore. But I think this is great, and great that you guys are taking on that initiative. So.
I have to make a comment. First of all, thank you so very much for your presentation. I know English is not your first language, and translating from one idea to another must be difficult. I don't think I would want to do what you did. Secondly, I am unfortunately I am a source for some of this material because they were having trouble, as they said early on, sourcing it. I got some of this from our own city staff. For example, the month-to-month TOT for all those years. I got that from a previous council city manager, which was very helpful. Unfortunately, we need to do a deep dive into those numbers probably in the future. And secondly, that number, 145%, comes from, if you look at the CAFRA report from 2006 to the current period, 2018, that change is roughly 16 million. I think it's from 2006, maybe 2003. But it's from 16 million to 36 million. And that's where you get that 145% growth rate over time. That's not the case with sales tax. Turns out that the sales tax over that same time frame has only grown 45%. Now, it is a bigger number. We went from 111 million to, I guess, almost $200 million, right, in terms of sales tax. But what was interesting about this, as I was helping them, it was that these two revenue or tax revenue streams were probably the best proxy for the economic output of the city that we have to go on so far. And that's good and bad. Good because the CAFRA does a pretty good job of document that, and now any resident can go and take a look at that for themselves and figure out what the growth in we'll call a proxy GDP for Solvang has been. It's been fairly strong at about 4% per year compounded average growth rate over 15 years. The problem is we need to do a better job, as they pointed out, trying to identify those sources of revenue. As we saw, the food and beverage is made up of 4 or 5 different things. Restaurants were just one component. There were supermarkets mixed in there with liquor stores and some other food processing, which didn't make any sense. So to try and understand how bringing more tourists has a positive impact on the city is going to be more difficult. We need to figure out how do more tourists help us with respect to food and beverage, that kind of thing. Or how do we build a community that can then support more tourism, right? So I think what they've done is a great job of exposing things that we need to look deeper into. And I can't thank you enough for that. And I really look forward to seeing Bella Hadid on Instagram. And more importantly, I want that Eula Brew. I want that beer. So thank you very much for that presentation.
Yep, I've got another, I have another question for you all. Do you all have a website?
Website?
Yeah,
For
for your group, for what you,
no,
for what
we
you
don't
do.
have one for our project.
So
Well, get smart, get one.
Yeah.
I don't know how this happened, but I became kind of a quasi-mentor to the group, which is great. I love helping. What the school wants to do, the Niels Brock College, is have the kids work with us, the residents, the businesses, as well as the government, so that they get real practical experience. And then hopefully they might even come back as interns in the future under a different program. So they'll keep coming back year after year, and each group will build upon the previous group. This group, the task for this group was to collect as much information and create the databases that then the next group would be able to build upon and draw some more interesting insights and conclusions for our benefit, both in terms of the businesses as well as the city. And more importantly, Copenhagen is a smart city, and it's one of the top 10 in the world. And it's not because of technology, and it's not because of revenue per se. It's because that it's this combination of things. It's a strategy where the government, the businesses, and the residents all work together to create a happier, wealthier, higher quality of life. And that's really, I think, what you were trying to say at the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to put words in your mouth. I mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we're like Copenhagen is definitely, I don't want to like disown you of anything, but Copenhagen has definitely a better like system that.
It really doesn't. So since you don't speak, English is not your primary language,
But
throw it.
wrap it
I
up.
will wrap it up. So I encourage everybody just to Google Smart Cities Copenhagen, and up pops a whole variety of wonderful stories about how Copenhagen is working as in this context to make it a more viable, healthier community for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we have item number 1, public communications, written or verbal. Lisa, could you please announce the criteria for the public comment?
At this time, please direct comments to the City Council regarding consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the council. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes.
First speaker we have is Tracy Beard.
Hi, City Council, community. We have our first STEM program, July 26th, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We are doing actually a STEM with STEAM. We are adding the arts this year at the Wilding Museum and using our natural resources that we have here. And we'll be down at the riverbed doing soil samples to doing some viticultural. So we're going to be doing that to help our students out 100. We also would like to say that we have completed our preventive workplace harassment classes for the month of May. We will start online with Cal Chambers for all of our chamber members, employees, non-employees, English speaking and non-English speaking you can do that we have never done before, and we'll be the first chamber in Santa Barbara County to be doing that. We have our music in the park. That will start July 12th, Lowdown Dudes, and we have our rack cards out. July 6th, we have the Chumash Casino Resort, the grand opening for the pool. We hope everyone comes. June is the marketing for workplace, 5 to 7 at the Lansby. June 13th is Lucas and Luella, our tasting room for marketing. And I would like to say our community won a social responsibility for our Women in Business, a bronze award for our commercial. Over 100 businesses were involved in that. And we'd like to thank you at the City Council and the Women's Economic Venture. And that commercial was showed over 350 times with over 100 businesses in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Richardson, followed by Sabine.
I just want to say a quick word about something that really is in my heart are these Danish kids that were here. I had a hand in seeing that they were here to go to the high school, and I've told every one of them that they're the cream of the crop of children in Denmark, and that there will be the new future leaders of Denmark. They'll be the politicians and the business leaders of the country, and it's an honor for them to come to our town to go at least for a small session. But the real reason I'm here is I'm speaking as a member of the American Legion and also a former elected official. Yesterday we had a beautiful day. There were a lot of things to do yesterday: shopping, television, movies, just sitting around barbecues and things. But one of the most important things was the ceremony honoring our fallen veterans. That turned out with a group of well over 200 people sitting on our park that were there to honor those folks. What really disappointed me was we only had one council member there that I saw. And the people that come to our town to honor these people, the dignitaries we have, need to be greeted and welcomed to our town. In this case, I guess, Karen, did you go up and speak to the colonel? Yeah. These people come to our town, they should be invited in and welcomed to, because they do come on their own time. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is that on future events, future things that are public ceremonies and those sorts of things, that the council is represented with a big thank you for the dignitaries that are here. We have dignitaries like ambassadors, like council persons, like consul persons that come from around the world, and they need to be welcomed. They need to be recognized that we're here. So that was my comments. One quick thing. The flat fender Jeep guys, every year they had a parking place on First Street during that ceremony. This year they couldn't get one. It didn't happen for some reason. I'd like to see that the council or that the city reserve a spot next to the park for the Jeep guys. They come out, the World War II Jeeps. People are really interested in them, and that's one of the reasons that bring them to the event. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Sabine?
Hi. I was very excited to see the Danish students that that I totally agree with. I also want to kind of add on to this, how we can kind of improve Solvang by actually getting a closer look at Copenhagen. That is I went there this past summer with my entire family, and I've been a lot of places, a lot of countries, a lot of cities, Europe and everywhere. And Copenhagen is now my absolutely #1 favorite city that I've ever been to. And the reason is why, because there's so much life. There's bike lanes everywhere. And I really want to, what I really, really want is for one of you, most likely the mayor, to go to get the feeling, because you can read as much as you want, but get a feeling what Copenhagen really is like, because you can, it's the atmosphere, it's a word, hygge, that I would really like to adopt into this town. I would do anything I can to do that, to get that feeling of hygge is all about. It's not about just you and a crowd of people. It's also the environment that you're in, creating bike lanes that I would love to see in this town. My big vision that a lot of people will probably turn their heads will probably be, I would love to see this as a no-zone kind of town. At least maybe try out and part of the street in Copenhagen at a special event, Christmas, where Danes are big on Christmas. And the reason is it's wet, it's cold, it's nice, and we create actually hygge. That with æbleskiver and gløgg and hot chocolate and things like that. So if we could close down half of Copenhagen to get the feel of having a walking, I don't know, what a gågade, pedestrian area, that families, not just tourism that can look and go into stores, but also make it a family friendly, so the people who has young children can let the children roam around. And then kind of little surprising why we might not, with having this, well, let me start from the beginning. The stores, the hours of, I think they're closing down too early, especially the restaurant and the food and the places where you can actually, because if you come from another, I used to live in on the base, by the time everyone gets out of work, wanting to go and look around, we call it window shopping, there isn't any time because the place is closed down at 5 and it's pretty much a very sad town after that. So thank you so much. I had a lot more to say, but I'll do this part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Mendiza.
Good evening. hidden health dangers of microwave radiation. It's a big topic. I have a nonprofit organization that deals with early childhood development, and so for the last decade, information about Wi-Fi radiation and its impact on children, how they learn, their reproductive DNA, all kinds of different issues. I think you probably are aware of the damage that people are suffering from this kind of radiation. Cancers, cardiovascular disease, miscarriages, it goes on and on and on. And all of this is not just me, it's well documented. The reason I came now is because on April the 4th of this year, the California Supreme Court published an opinion that shifted the jurisdiction on implementation and deployment of these technologies to local communities, meaning you. So this is a huge thing, because prior to that ruling, the telecommunications industry pretty much did whatever they wanted to and had it locked down. So now you have the jurisdiction to be able to regulate these technologies as they impact us, all of us. So that's a really big deal. I have a paper for you that goes into some of the detail about the frequency ranges that are being used and how high they are, and so on and so forth. We have Wi-Fi, we have the new rollout of 5G, we have cell towers, we have your cell phones themselves. All of these technologies rely on Wi-Fi communication or Wi-Fi radiation. We have, as I illustrated in the little packet that I gave you, 2 cell towers that most people don't know are in the Antique Center. And they're just converting that Antique Center into a hotel. So all the residents who will be staying in that hotel are going to be sleeping underneath 2 cell towers, which is crazy as far as I'm concerned. So to make it really, really short, I'm asking you, the City Council, to carefully review the attached information that I've gathered for the last 5 years. It's here. I put it up on my website. You can just click and watch the movies and download all of it as PDFs. I'd like you to take personal responsibility, moral and ethical responsibility, for the potential harm that this and future technologies may cause to our citizens and our visitors. Most presently, the 5G technology that's coming out. I'd like to ask the city attorney to verify that the Supreme Court ruling does shift the jurisdiction to you and the power to regulate these technologies here in town. I'd ask you to do a moratorium on 5G, on its implementation, until it's proven safe. Finally, take steps to move those cell towers, the AT&T cell towers that are now hidden in the Antique Center.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tracy Farhat.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and members of the audience. Tracy Farhad, Executive Director of the Solvang Conference and Visitors Bureau, with your tourism update. First of all, I just wanted to let you know that this past weekend saw record numbers for Memorial Weekend in the Visitors Center. We served 2,200 guests in the Visitors Center, with almost 1,000 on Saturday alone, and that's a 28% increase over Easter's visitation in April. Our team will be going to one of the largest travel trade shows that is put on nationally every year. This weekend is called IPW. We're going with the Visit the St. Inez Valley in a double booth, and we have representation, and we will be meeting with tour operators and also attending the media marketplace with over 45 appointments. And we're also bringing 30 of those travel agents and media back to Solvang following this event for an all-day-long site visit, and being able to take them, walk them around, Surrey bikes, site visits, show them the hotels, the attractions, the cultural, as well as vineyard experience, and then working with Buellton as well for bringing those folks here. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity. And I was very excited about Niels Brock students bringing the attention to the tourism and how good it is for our fair town here. This is actually a National Tourism Month, and Visit California puts out these wonderful stats I'd like to just give you a little heads up on, because it's good to feel good about the industry we're a big part of. So tourism benefits, of course, all Californians. They get more, we have more jobs, there's more spending, and more tax revenue from this wonderful green industry. California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and they say, the Visit California office says tourism is a key reason why. In 2018, the industry, tourism for California, generated $140.6 billion for the state's economy, and that's a 5.4% increase over 2017. And interestingly enough, for the state of California, 6 out of every $10 that are spent comes from outside the state of California. So that's other domestic and international as well. Now, room demand has gone up 2%, but I'd also like to caution you, because we did our own internal study of the Tri-County region, and we're showing that supply is increasing over these next 2 years of up to 3,700 rooms that are going to come online. But taxes from the tourism industry help keep California thriving. There's $11.8 billion in tax dollars in 2018. That's what tourism industry generated. And it's also top export for California. Travel is California's largest export industry, providing 1.2 million jobs, and employment increase have averaged over 3.5% annually since 2010. So obviously travel and tourism is good for economy, good for the state, and good for Solvang. And that's our message today, and we'll let you know how well it goes after our next largest trade show in early June. Thank you.
Thank you. Kirk I'm going to botch your name up. How do you spell it? Norgren.
Good evening, City Council. Kirk Nordgren. And I'm here with Carmichael Training Systems to talk about an event to bring people to Solvang and their tourist dollars and to fill our hotels. The event is the Figueroa Mountain Grand Fondo. It's a cycling event. November 9th is the date for 2019, and this is the 3rd year. The first year started and finished in Santa Ynez. Last year we started and finished at Gainey Vineyard, just outside of Santa Ynez. And what I'm going to propose is that the City of Solvang comes on as the presenting sponsor of the event in 2019, and we start and finish the event in Solvang. Could be Solvang Park, could be the Mission, could be on a street somewhere, but I think there's great opportunity for that. A little bit on the participation. So we had roughly 600 riders in 2017, 700 last year, and we're very optimistic that we can get to 800 or 850 participants in 2019. They also bring their friends and family with them. So a little bit about cycling tourism. I don't know how many of you were able to attend Joan Hartman's Cycling Tourism Summit that she hosted a couple weeks ago. But one of the speakers there mentioned there's 2 keys to increasing cycling tourism in your region. One of them is cycling-friendly businesses, and the second is highlighting the signature cycling routes in your area. And our Grand Fondo, which is just a mass participation cycling event, does an excellent job of highlighting the primary cycling routes, signature cycling routes. These are our assets in cycling tourism. Figueroa Mountain is the hardest cycling climb in Southern California, I would argue, and cyclists like that. They want to be challenged. They want hard things. Our route also takes us out on Fox and Canyon. If we do utilize Solvang, it would come down Ballard Canyon. Those are also 2 our major assets in terms of cycling routes, which bring people here. They want to come here to ride. And then Solvang has an opportunity I would say it is the center of the Santa Ynez Valley, and it has an opportunity to become or to be the cycling center of the Santa Ynez Valley, meaning those people are staying here, they're spending their dollars here. A little more on the economic impact. We've surveyed our participants the last 2 years. 60% of them have spent at least one night here in the Santa Ynez Valley in association with our event. 72% one night, 60% 2+ nights. So I'd love to come back and talk more about it, do a more formal presentation to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it for public comment. With that, we'll move on to item number 2. We have the city manager's report and advanced calendar.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, David Gasaway, city manager. 3 quick items to update you on tonight. The first is on the upcoming calendar on June 10th, we're going to have our preliminary budget workshop here in council chambers, regular meeting date. We're working feverishly to give you a new look budget this year that we hope sheds some additional light on all of the city's financial resources, where the revenues come from, where the money's being spent. As somewhat of an add-on to that budget hearing, we're actually going to have a representative from Muni Services here that night. Muni Services is our sales tax consultant. They work on our behalf through the Board of Equalization to ensure that sales tax collections are happening appropriately, and they can get into some granular detail to give us a little bit of a look at the similar data that the students showed us here tonight, with a little bit more detail and comply with law. On June 22nd, the council has your council retreat upcoming. That is scheduled. Don Maruska is going to be our facilitator. He's here on the Central Coast, based out of Morro Bay, very skilled facilitator in doing these events. He'll actually also be here on June 10th, just to give a quick, maybe 5-minute overview, 10-minute overview of what the expectations are for the 22nd, and introduce himself to the council and the community. And then the third item for me to cover tonight real quick is an update on our wastewater treatment plant. Originally, we had scheduled for this meeting a second half of the wastewater treatment plant project conversation that we had started back in April, on April 13th, where at that meeting we mostly talked about the technical aspects, and tonight was going to be more the financial aspects. We ended up pulling that from the agenda tonight just because we needed a little bit more time on the financial analysis. So following last month's meeting, what we did is we went and we have 3 different consultants, one on the technical design aspects. We worked with them to really adapt to what the council's direction was at that time, and then have them really sharpen the pencil on their estimates for the costs of the project based on what council's direction was at that time, which really left us with 3, call them sub-alternatives to what we showed on the 13th. And then we take that information, we turn that over to a financial consultant who is really our fiduciary, looking at different options for bonded indebtedness and different ways in which we can go about funding the overall project. And they looked at a couple of different scenarios, 20-year bonds, 30-year bonds, as well as the sub-alternatives that PACE, the technical consultants, looking at. They're looking at ways in which we can call it, just kind of phasing in rate increases over time, so that any impact to the ratepayer that comes as a result of the project isn't, that first year. You don't just have a jump in rate and then let that carry on. It would tier in over time with project alternatives that also can be phased in over time to expand capacity based on what our current needs are and looking into the future. So all that said, there's I think a bunch of different rate structures, and any one change in the technical aspect then has a downhill effect on all of those analysis and all those calculations, and so we just couldn't quite meet the time frame. I expect to get all of those costing models back here within the next couple of weeks. As soon as we have them, then we will bring that back to City Council for the second half of that conversation, either at a regular meeting, possibly a study session, but the June calendar is full with the 2 budget sessions as well as the strategic retreat for the council. So more to come on that as we know more detail.
Thank you very much, David. Lisa, would you please read the title for the consent calendar?
The consent agenda is designed for routine administrative city matters and is approved by roll call vote by one motion. These items are discussed only on the request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak on consent agenda items during the public communications portion of the agenda.
All right, with that, do any council members have any items they'd like to pull? If not, I'll entertain a Motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as is.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. It's been seconded.
Councilmember Waite,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dearness,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes. With that, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 4. Lisa, can we get a title readout and a staff report?
Item 4, options for future administration of the Solvang Skytt Mesa Landscape Lighting and Maintenance District.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight is a report on the various options that the City Council has regarding the future administration of the Skytt Mesa LLMD, which is the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District. At the March 25th City Council meeting, the council adopted a resolution setting that assessment at a total of $1,224 per parcel. Included within that amount was a portion for the cost of landscape maintenance at Skytt Mesa. And staff estimated at that time that the portion of the $1,224 for landscaping services was $595. So that money that's used for the landscape and lighting district as a whole provides things other than landscaping, such as lighting, irrigation maintenance, and the electricity that used to power the lights. There was a concern that was raised by some members of Skytt Mesa community regarding the landscaping services that were being provided at Skytt Mesa. So the council had directed staff to come up with some alternatives for addressing the issues regarding the landscaping. And so before you is a report. I won't reiterate the report entirely, but there are some options that the council has to address the concerns that the members of the Skytt Mesa community had expressed to the council originally. So one of the options that the council could do is to just get out of the landscaping business altogether, so to speak. Under the Streets and Highways Code, specifically Section 22630, the council has to annually set the assessment for the landscape and lighting maintenance district. And in so doing, it can omit certain activities that would be done under the LLMD, one of those being landscape. So the assessment presumably would be lower by the amount that would be attributable to the landscape maintenance obligations. And as I said, the staff estimated last year's assessment for the landscaping services at $595 per parcel. Another option available to the council would be to allow the Skytt Mesa community to set up its own homeowners association, and the city would then contract with the homeowners association rather than contracting directly with the landscaping companies. That way the HOA, if it was formed, would have to arrange the landscaping work to be done, and they would have to manage the landscaping services on their own. That would take the city out of the landscaping business, so to speak. The city obviously would still have some additional administrative responsibilities in ensuring that the money being used from the assessments was actually being used for landscape maintenance. But ultimately, it would be up to the HOA to make the contract with the landscaping services and oversee the quality and frequency of the work that's being done. The third option is to just allow the HOA to take over this responsibility on its own and kind of a hybrid eliminate the landscape from there. So the difficulty with the HOA that we identified is that because all the the Skytt Mesa lots have been sold into individual ownership, the individual owners would need to vote to set up their own homeowners association, and therefore that would require a vote of the homeowners on Skytt Mesa. If it was not unanimous, then presumably there would be a lower number of homeowners that would be willing to contribute to the landscaping services. So we identified that as a potential problem in the event that the city either gets out of the landscaping business altogether and leaves it to the homeowners to band together, or if the city were to contract with that HOA. So the primary options that we've identified for the council at this point are to continue with the status quo, with the city contracting for the landscaping services and using the funds that are collected from the LLMD assessments. The city could also continue the status quo, but contract with a Skytt Mesa formed homeowners association to provide those landscaping services, again, using the funds that were collected through the LLMD assessments. Or the third option would be to eliminate the landscaping portion of the LLMD assessment, leave it to the individual homeowners or an HOA to actually contract directly with the landscaping contractors. There would not be a source of collective funds in that instance unless the homeowners association or the homeowners individually banded together to assess themselves for those costs. So the fiscal impact that we've identified is fairly minimal. If in any of those situations, we would not anticipate that the administrative overhead for the city staff would increase dramatically. But that's my staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Just one quick question. So it would require 100% of the
No,
residents?
no. If the HOA could be any number of the residents, and it would not necessarily have to be contiguous residents. So if you had 40 residents up there who wanted to band together and form a homeowners association, they could impose a homeowners association on their own lots. They could not impose it on other lots that did not vote in favor of that, though.
So that would give them the ability to basically have an HOA for the members that choose to be part of that, but then others that want services that they obtain elsewhere or however they want to do it could then do it differently. Is that
correct?
Kind of the hybrid? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions of the staff?
Yeah, I was wondering if, with that 595 number, was there any way to work in a overhead cost to the city, or is that included in that number? Has that?
I believe there is an overhead. I'm not sure what the percentage is. In an assessment district, the assessment report has to identify, one, the cost of the services as a whole. So you figure out what the services are, and then you divide that essentially by the parcels that are benefited by that assessment. So to a certain extent, when the city is administering a contract on its own, it's going to figure in the cost that it costs to city staff to administer it. Whether it's a separate line item in the assessment report, I don't recall.
So we don't have that number split out per se to show like management, basically management.
I don't know.
fee.
The city manager may know that.
Yeah, looking directly at the LLMD assessment report that was adopted in March, it looks like there's $12,000 for administration by the city. There's $5,000 for the engineer's report that's required annually, and then another $200 to the county for the collection on the property tax bills.
So is that worked into the 595 so that the homeowners can see what they're?
I'm assuming that is.
I would
yes.
expect that's in the entire assessment, the $12,000. It's not directly, because so it covers the lighting, the maintenance of the light standards, the irrigation unrelated to landscaping, the other things that are covered by there that are separate from the landscaping.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is a number that the homeowners can look at and say this would be the cost yearly, because the 595 to me doesn't include this overhead cost that would go into these contracts for them to kind of see what their cost differential would be.
Yeah. And for an HOA to administer a contract on its own, there may not be the same kind of cost that the city has, because typically HOA board members are not compensated for their service on the board.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, if they hired a professional manager, yes, there would be overhead costs on it, but it would not be the same as the city.
Matt, I'm sorry, did you have something you wanted to chip in on this?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor Toussaint and council members. Matt Vanderlinden, your Public Works Director and City Engineer. So the 595, so as the city manager mentioned, the budget for the Skytt Mesa LLMD consists of about 12 different line items. One is the irrigation, water, the landscape maintenance contract. There's a line item for repairs and maintenance every year. That's over and above the monthly charge that we pay, because those are unpredictable. There's the power for the lighting. There's the city staff administration and so forth. So the $595 amount is just taking the landscape maintenance contract and the repairs and maintenance amount, add those two together, divide by 169. That's the number of parcels in Skytt Mesa.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the staff report?
No questions.
With that, we'll move on to public comment. Our first speaker is Sherry Noble.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. This is going to be short because I know other people have prepared lengthier comments. I just wanted on record that I want to maintain the status quo. When I bought my house, I bought it with the intention that I did not own that little strip of land in front of my house and that it would be maintained, and that's a contract I signed. I don't recall that code being in my contract when I bought the house, and I would like to get some more information about the legality of that. I'm very much against an HOA or changing anything, and would like to have a way to look at these costs more in depth, and I think other people will be able to share that information. Thank you.
Cheryl Herman.
Good evening. I also oppose the formation of an HOA, and I'm support continuation of the option 1. I'd also like to see more information from the city, especially a projection over the care of the trees in our neighborhood. We have a lot of sycamore trees and oak trees have special laws regarding their maintenance. And I'd like to just see how that's going to impact the overall budget of maintenance in the area. And that's primarily the reason why I want it to remain option 1.
James Snodgrass?
Thank you, and yeah, I want to speak out too. As far as the HOA, I'm completely against an HOA. But wanted to shed some other information that I've been digging up and trying to find. You know, most of the property we maintain up there that goes into the LLMD is actually property that's not owned by any of the property owners. So according to city staff, it's owned either by the city or by the LLMD. So that accounts for about 3.5 out of the 6 acres that's actually maintained up there. None of this has any recreational value. We don't get to do anything with it. It's just something that we get to look at, and all city people get to look at as they go through there. Some of the other things that I also support right now, option 1, but I think you guys may want to amend that. I think there needs to be some additional oversight to it. I think the contractor that's doing the landscaping services is taking advantage of the city, and I think somebody needs to have some sort of oversight over what they're doing. Occasionally on weekdays, I come through the neighborhood. I don't get to go through there all the time, and I'd say about 90% of the time when I drive through the neighborhood, they're on break. Whether that be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, noon, or 7 o'clock in the morning, they're on break. So I think that's a big reason why nothing's getting done up there, is somebody needs to have oversight, whether that be somebody from the neighborhood or somebody from the city, is there needs to be somebody that actually provides some oversight over the Brightview contracting services. Let's see, so I'll come back to some of that stuff. So some other considerations that I think you need to take into consideration moving on is, according to state law and executive order, is up there, most of our land that out of that 3.5 acres, I think it's 1.8 acres is turf that's in between the street and the sidewalk. The state says that you can no longer water that as of 2025. So all of that grass is going to either have to be removed or just going to end up not being watered anymore. So we need to look at that, as that's going to be a cost, obviously, to us to maintain that and remove that. So we should probably get a jump start on that. By removing that grass, it's going to probably reduce our landscaping costs. It's going to greatly reduce our water costs. Should reduce the mowing, the blowing, the repairs, the edging, the weeding, and it gives the landscaping services more time to focus on the remainder of the land that's up there, which again is the smallest part of the land. To put the water into context, we pay $82,000 per year for water, to water up there. Out of that $82,000, that's more than what's in the city budget for all of the open space in all of Solvang. So more than in the city budget for all of Solvang. Right now, you guys pay $76,000 to water all of the open space in Solvang. We pay $82,000 for our small little development. Sunnyfields has 4 acres of turf versus our 1.8 acres of turf. $18,000 is spent to water Sunnyfields, and we pay $82,000 to water our development. Like I said, I think we need some weekly oversight. Maybe we have to have the landscaping company do a report on what they're actually doing up there, and somebody go and check to see what they're doing. There's not a whole lot of land. It should be able to be done. We also budget $50,000 out of the budget for repairs and replacement. On my guess, if we're buying 1-gallon plants, that buys 5,000 1-gallon plants to repair and replace our neighborhood. So I think you guys really need to look at the money that's in the budget and see how that's getting spent. Out of all of our budget, we spend about $230,000 for our community. That's what's budgeted for. And we got $82,000 going to a landscape company, $82,000 going to water, and $50,000 going to repairs and replacement. That's also used by that landscape company. So take a look at how those monies are used and maybe a little more oversight.
Thank you. Gary Riches.
Good evening. I too and my wife were against an HOA, which I think you're going to find vast majority do not want an HOA. It was one of the reasons why we bought the house, because there isn't one. The $594, does that include landscape maintenance and water? That's a question, I mean, it does not, it's just the landscaping. Okay, so the city then, one of the options would be to still pay for the water, but not the landscaping itself? I'm confused on that, in one of the options. That's a question.
It's
Anyone?
It's public comment, so.
Okay. And has anyone taken into consideration if the water and the landscaping would revert it back to the homeowners, who pays for remetering and relocating all the irrigation lines that are now on you guys, on the city? Because now if it's got to be back on the homeowners, all that irrigation in the parkways has to be redone and remetered, et cetera, and put onto the house. So I don't know if you guys have taken into consideration the amount of cost for all the homeowners or the city to do that. And what about all the common area buffer areas that are like mounds? Who's going to maintain that? It's not on a homeowner's, it's across the street from homeowners, a lot of it. It's not on their property. So those are all the questions I have with the minutia of doing all this. But I am definitely against a homeowners association, which I think the majority, far vast majority is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Massey.
Hi, everybody. So we're Mark and Robin Massey. We live there at Skytt Mesa. And here are some of our thoughts on the subject. We realize that the LLMD was established long before anyone could have anticipated the impact on both the city and the residents. And now there's some discontent with the way things are being handled and maintained. Some residents have given the choice, would like to maintain the parkways ourselves, so that we can ensure that they'll always look presentable and perhaps enjoy a decrease in the LLMD fee that we're assessed through our property taxes. Others are content with the job that the maintenance crew are presently doing. Personally, we have spent a lot of money creating a beautifully landscaped front yard and are embarrassed by the way the parkway looks in front of our home. Would be happy if the city would allow us to maintain it ourselves, but believe that the city should still pay for the water. Before purchasing our lot, we had a survey done of the property, and the fact is, as it was mentioned before, our property ends on the inside of the sidewalk. So everything from the sidewalk to the street is not owned by the residents, and we'd have to assume that the city owns it. If this is true, then why are we paying to maintain it? Okay, another issue that's caused us to become very concerned is the possibility that the city will turn over maintenance, irrigation, and insurance liability of the current easements to the residents who own the land where they exist. So in our case, we own a large parcel. It's 2.66 acres, in fact. Of that acreage, less than 3/4 of an acre is usable by us. The rest is either public open space or no development zone. Prior to purchasing our lot, one of the private lots previously owned by a member of the Skytt family, we did a lot of research and had many questions answered by the city of Solvang regarding concerns about who would maintain water and carry insurance on that portion of our property that's designated either public open space or no development zone. We were assured in an email that I've retained that the city has complete responsibility, paid for by Skytt Mesa residents through our annual assessment, for all the above mentioned. This was one very important clarification that we needed before we agreed to purchase the land and build our home on it. If the city turns over maintenance of the open space to the residents who own the property where the easements exist, that'll cause an unfair financial burden for those particular homeowners. If we are compelled to carry insurance on the portion of our property, we will find it necessary to make the open spaces private so that we do not expose ourselves to lawsuits from anyone who may come onto the property and injure themselves. When each of us who live in Skytt Mesa purchased our homes, we did so with the expectation that the open spaces would remain open and that our fees would be paid to maintain them. If the city decides to return the care of those portions of land to the individual homeowners who have them included on our deeds as easements, will the city then remove the easement agreements? If the city removes the easements, will the character of the open spaces change? Will the individual homeowners have more options with regard to how they use the land and that they own and now must maintain with their own funds? How will the rest of our neighbors feel if the land that they believed was open becomes private and individual homeowners then have more say with how it's used and maintain those portions of the neighborhood? So we just hope that the city will come up with a plan that allows each of us to maintain parkways in front of our properties and keeps the open spaces in the care of the LLMD. We don't want the responsibility of caring for almost 2 acres of land that we cannot personally use or protect.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Greg Milliken.
Mayor and council, great to be here again. All of the Skytt Mesa folks who are here decided to come to Solvang because it's a smart city. We hope and we think. I think you're getting the drift so far of kind of what the sense is. It's not so much that people want to have a homeowners association. We're at the corner of Hans Park Trail and Solvang Mesa. So we're one of those houses that has about 1,000 square feet of slope that's subject to the landscape easement, in addition to and that's on our lot. And so, I don't know how that would work out in any of these plans. I think the main thing here is to figure out, and what people are saying and what you're hearing is, how can this, which is actually not a bad setup the way it is, how can it be made to run better and be more accountable so that the residents get what they anticipated getting, and so that the city isn't burdened by having to pay attention to stuff that really the residents are able to pay attention to. So if there's a means, maybe option 4 or hybrid option 5 or something by which there could be some oversight injected or Skytt Mesa resident participation in the budgeting process and performance review so that we would all understand together how best to make this work, then I think we would be coming up with the right tool for the problem rather than, trying to put a screw in with a hammer, if you will. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. I have no more speaker slips. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? With that, we'll take it back to the council.
We got a hand.
Do we? Oh, I'm sorry, Sabine.
Hi, I didn't want to speak, but I do. The the easement, the one that's behind our backyard, is facing the park. I don't think that the city has been up there cutting the wild grass in the back. We have done that, and it seems like we always have to contact the city to make sure that it's being done. It seems to be work. I do walk every single day around the neighborhood, and I find a lot of, if we're talking about water, I don't like wasting, that's a fact. A lot of the spigots, they either, they have no plants. The plants, I don't know, somehow being removed. I can probably count 10 in one little area, especially where Mark Massey is living, nearby around up on the hill on one side there. Not his fault for sure, but in that area, and I don't think it's not overlooked. I've also done yard work outside, and I've seen one of the workers in the yellow jacket with a clipboard, walking around, checking his workers to see if they do it. I think he should put the clipboard down, get to work, and get it done. It's not that hard, and it needs to be trimmed. This is not bad plants. It's not the one I would probably prefer, now that I know everything about natives. I think we do need to go where we can actually go green, where we can save water, drought tolerant, keep it trimmed, keep it green, and find better solutions. And there's great resources, just to, not to advertise, but I'm very thrilled with the Manzanita Nursery. He has a lot of skill, a lot of knowledge, and when he drives by Skytt Mesa, he's not very pleased of the choices of plants. And it is shown by the Mexican grasses that I don't know who put that in. I didn't know till they spread like wildfire. They're everywhere, and I know they are removed now, or at least going to. But it's just sad as a resident, so we have to go and tell the city, well, you should have one up from the city that's in charge to go and check up once in a blue moon and just see if it's done properly, and what if, in case they would live there, would that be pleasing? Because it is a beautiful area, and all the neighbors, I think we can all agree, we do love it there. We just want to keep it so it looks nice. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So, I mean, I'd just like to clarify, I think this is on the agenda because the council does care very much and wants to see the best for Skytt Mesa. And we commonly do hear all these complaints from the residents. And like you say, there's, you know, it's really hard to find a way to skin the cat in a way that's going to make everyone happy. But it is here because we care. So with that, I don't know, I think, Daniel, you were kind of the driver this last time. Maybe you'd like to start.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that that they don't want an HOA.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, it's on. It seems pretty obvious. I don't blame them for that. What it does is it shifts the burden back to the city again, and I'm not sure that any of the solutions are the right solution, to be honest. I'm not quite sure what the solution is. I do think that to get better service, you're going to have to pay more. So maybe, and if they don't want to pay more, then and then the more oversight that we have also is going to increase our costs as a city, because obviously that overhead amount that we're not working in there, that staff is spending to, you know, manage Brightview or whatever landscaping contractor we have, the more time we spend, the more time that's not spent doing other things in the city as well. So it's a tough solution. What do you guys think?
Matt, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I just thought it might be helpful before you finish your council comments and deliberation to have me respond to some of the comments. So I do want to say thank you to all the Skytt Mesa residents that are here and for their thoughtful comments. I did want to, again, just respond to a few of them that I thought would be helpful for everyone. So the county does have special regulations regarding oak trees, but the city of Solvang does not. So there are no special laws that we have to follow regarding the maintenance of the oak trees, just common sense and good standards of care for the oak trees. And then I did want to mention now that all of the land that's being maintained, every square inch is on someone's parcel. The city does not own any land whatsoever. Every single square inch is on someone's parcel. And I can't really speak for the Planning Commission and City Council that approved all this 16 years ago. I don't think any staff here now that work at the city that were involved in this. Anyway, none of the staff that are here that would be normally involved in this were here 16 years ago. But I'm sure that the Planning Commission and City Council back then had no intention of the city accepting any liability for area on private property. And then I did want to mention that about 2 years ago, there was a proposed state law. Well, during the drought, there was regulations passed, a new state law that you're not allowed to have landscaping on medians, turf or grass on medians. That's the islands in the middle of the road. And they were proposing to pass a law regarding the parkway strips also. And based on that and the drought conditions, those are the two things that led us to decide for phase 3 and 4 not to install turf, but to go with the drought-tolerant vegetation and plants. So if that proposed law has now come into effect, I was not aware of that, but we knew that may be coming, and so if that is correct, then we would have to slowly phase in the removal of the parkway turf. As far as the water usage, yes, the way that Skytt Mesa was phased and the way that phase 1 was done, there are a total of 7 water meters out there, and the total common area that's maintained by the LLMD exceeds 5 acres, and so it's quite a bit of area, it's quite a bit of turf. Of course, a lot of it is the plants and the drip system as well. But there's definitely, the irrigation is approximately 40% of the total cost for the LLMD, if you include the meter charge and the water usage. And then there was a comment about the repairs and maintenance budget. And so someone also commented about the Mexican feathergrass. So whenever the staff has encountered a problem out there, which there's been a few, including the feathergrass, under the repairs and maintenance budget, we include additional funds to cover what we call these little special projects to, in this case, part of that money is going to remove the feathergrass and to replant with new plants. And then there's also an area that borders the Hans Christian Andersen Park that's been a problem with weeds, and we have planned under a repairs and maintenance budget a project to spread weed fabric and decorative gravel rock in those areas, so it'll be no water usage, very low maintenance costs, and eliminate the big weed problem there. So that's why the repairs and maintenance budget every year will fluctuate a little bit depending on the little projects that we're trying to implement that year to improve things out there. One of the residents had questions about the irrigation system, and if you have an HOA or if you turn it over, or if you just let the homeowners be responsible for it. So that resident is correct. How you handle the irrigation system is going to be a big problem. So just want to make sure you consider that in your decision making. And then I did want to mention, I like the idea of the residents taking care of the parkway strip in front of their property if they so choose. So that's something that, the city council might want staff to discuss further or to consider further and discuss with some of the residents and internally to see if there's an option that hasn't been thought of yet that might include something like that. So that concludes my comments.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Robert.
I look at everything in government as the less amount that government is involved, the best. And I think that number 3 would be my favorite, but obviously that's not what the people that voted, people that live here want. So we're kind of at an impasse because is part of the deal the problem with the landscaper and not the whole method? Are we unhappy with the landscaper?
It seems to me like the majority of people are complaining about the actual landscaper and
yeah, and the HOA is totally out of the question. Usually I try not to get too swayed by, if there's 168 parcels in Skytt Mesa and 5 people speak, I don't always take that as meaning they speak for the whole group, but it's what I've heard from most everybody up there. So the only thing I could think of is to go with the status quo, better oversight of the landscaper. Is there any possibility for a citizens advisory committee to keep an eye on that?
That was one of my questions was, can you have like an oversight committee that kind of drives some of these things and pushes the performance? And for example, if we go out for an RFP for next year's renewal, looking at other providers besides Brightview, if that seems to be the source of the problem.
Well, as to the Citizen Advisory Committee, that's certainly something the citizens could band together and provide input at such time as the RFPs are issued and the responses come back. They could provide the input to the council as to which landscaping contractors they believe would be most responsive and most effective for the purposes. As far as administration or oversight, it's certainly something that staff can do when we send out the RFPs each year, is to take a look and say, okay, well, we have a track record now with Brightview. That will be taken into account in response to the RFP. The difficulty, and this is not just a difficulty at Skytt Mesa, is the number of landscapers out there is greatly outweighed by the amount of landscaping work that needs to be done. So finding responsible, competent landscapers can be difficult for public agencies. It's not just something that Solvang has to contend with. It's other cities are involved in this. But we can certainly take a look and see what contractors are available out there the next time the RFP comes up. And we can perhaps, as part of the RFP, put in specific performance standards, specific oversight, so that there's a little bit closer look to the work being done by the landscapers.
Are there any like SLA service level agreements or anything like that that is maintained that are currently measurable, or?
I'm not aware of any of those kind of standards being applied to the Brightview contract. Certainly something, that could be looked at. The difficulty is how much staff time do you put towards overseeing that type of contract? And if they're out there doing the work 2 hours a day, each day of the week, who is the staff person that you want from the city to take away from what they're already doing to go up and make sure that they're doing the work that they're supposed to? On a complaint-driven basis, obviously, staff understands that the work is not being done to a particular level, and we heard some comments tonight about either being on break or walking around with clipboards. Those are things that you would have to have a staff member from the city going out and enforcing to make sure that that isn't happening. But it's something, certainly if you set up performance standards and they're not meeting them, then you just have a provision in the contract where you terminate it and you look for someone else.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Karen?
Yeah, okay, so it really seems to me that the city got themselves into a real pickle when they agreed to maintain the private land of residents. So are you telling me that these open spaces and the spaces that are between the street and the sidewalk actually do belong to the homeowners up there? That the city doesn't own any of that land?
The city has no fee interest in any of the land up there, is my understanding. It does have rights of way for streets and sidewalks, but the typical rule in land use law is that property owners own the parcel to the center line of the street. And the city has rights of way over the portion from the edge of the sidewalk to the street. And that's how streets and sidewalks for public use get imposed. But the city does not actually own those. It's basically in the form of an easement.
Okay, and so then, when this development started years and years ago, there must have been some reason that the city of Solvang decided that they wanted to maintain the landscape or have some sort of control over that. And if so, how long was that agreement to be in place?
Well, I think if you look at cities in general, there will be sidewalks, there'll be streets, there'll be areas between the sidewalk and the street, parkways we call them, that require maintenance. Traditionally, cities have just taken that on and paid that out of general fund monies. What the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District allows is the people who are benefited by that work are actually paying for the work directly, rather than the citizens of Solvang as a whole paying for that on a percentage basis. So that's why LLMDs came about. It's to more directly focus the responsibility for the cost of those improvements and those activities on the people who are benefiting from them.
Okay, so there are lots up there that are much larger. Some lots are much larger than others, and they have a large amount of open space that the city is maintaining, even though we do not own it. That was part of the original agreement when the subdivision went in. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around why the city of Solvang would agree to that. Did we have a fear that the residents wouldn't maintain it and it wouldn't look park-like, or, I mean,
That can be one of the fears, but keep in mind, the city is basically, it's a banker, so to speak, in this situation. The city is collecting the residents' money and paying it out to the contractors. The city is not actually doing the work with its own forces. It is contracting sort of on behalf of the property owners to maintain these. Yes, in any development there is going to be a concern that in the absence of an HOA, the collective improvements of the area are not going to be maintained in such a manner as to avoid, weeds growing, fire hazards, and so on. So that is a frequent reason why you will have an LLMD imposed upon a development, and that's not uncommon. That happens in a lot of other cities. There are other collective financing mechanisms that are put on housing developments as well, aside from LLMDs. You have Melrose financing districts for other types of improvements. So the fact that there's an LLMD up there was not a specific decision because of Skytt Mesa. It's just one of the financing mechanisms that the city of Solvang had to avoid having to pay for the work being done out of the city's general fund and placing that cost on the residents.
okay, so was there a time limit on this, or was this to go on forever?
Well, the time limit is annual, basically. So the city has an opportunity every year to determine whether or not it's going to impose an assessment to conduct these services. The city council can, at any point when that comes up annually, make a determination that it's not going to do that for the coming year or coming future years. You will have the problem that the maintenance may not get done in that situation. You may have weed abatement issues, fire issues that could pop up. So the city has the opportunity every year to determine whether or not it's going to continue in that. And that is one of the options that was noted in there, is just to eliminate the landscaping. The residents also have the option every year to say, no, we don't want the assessment imposed this year. And if you get a sufficient number of people coming in and protesting during the annual assessment hearing, then the council can't impose the assessment, and then those activities would not get done. So every year that opportunity comes up. But the end game, there is no end date for that process to end until the LLMD is dissolved by city council action.
Okay, so, I almost feel as though both sides, the city and the property owners, weren't adequately informed as to how this was gonna work out. I don't, at this point, don't think it would be fair to throw everything over to the residents and have them form an HOA, although, in reality, I have to be conscious of public funds, so I'm not sure that we ought to be maintaining a private landscaping. But I'm wondering.
Yes,
Well, I was just told that the land is privately owned, that it's not city land. So that's where that quote came from. So, I would have to suggest that if they're not happy with the current landscaper or the current maintenance of the property, that they do form some sort of HOA or citizen advisory committee to select a landscaper that they approve of that would do the work that they would be happy with. And then we go with that. So it'd be a combination of maybe number two and something else.
Ryan?
Okay. Chris?
What a hot mess. I don't even know where to begin, but I do love the fact that you guys all showed up and asked really great questions. Mr. Snodgrass made some wonderful points. I love facts. I always try to make decisions based on data and facts. I love what you were suggesting, Mr. Milliken, right? I think that there is a solution here, but it's not the easy one, and it's not going to happen quickly. I think we do need to. I don't know if the council needs to spend more time on this at this point. I would like to see a citizens group kind of formed that can speak for the majority, and then work with the city manager and staff to answer all of these questions, which are really difficult. There's no easy answer. And some of these questions, for example, related to the easements, how we're taking care of them, but it's on private property. This doesn't make any sense. How did we get ourselves into this? Let's fix this so we don't have to keep worrying about this year after year. So I would recommend that somehow that we'd have some kind of workshop between the city staff and the citizens, and then when you guys have come to some kind of a solution agreement, a way forward, come back to the council, and we'd be happy to hear that. I think we can move forward on a more expeditiously in that particular way. Other than that, I don't have any solutions here. This is a mess.
Ryan? I'd be more than happy to meet with Greg if he wants to and discuss some of the ideas, or with other members of.
No, I think some great points brought up here tonight.
Be careful.
But again, a lot of it all comes down to, it seems like, performance-driven issues with the current company that we have the services contracted out with. So I think there's some opportunity here to kind of gather a little consensus of maybe a residents committee, advisory committee, however you want to call it, that can help provide staff with the feedback they need. But I mean, ultimately, I believe we have a contract with Brightview right now. But when it comes back up for review, we could build in, more service-driven type analytics into it to make sure that the next company, is actually performing to a level that the residents, want and deserve.
I think hearing the conversation, I'd be happy to meet with the residents and with staff, any council members that want to attend. We could do two things. One, we could make it a little bit of an educational session just to give a little bit better information on LLMDs, how the whole structure works. As the city attorney points out, it's not uncommon. We can also paint for the residents a little bit of an understanding of how we go about managing that contract, what those dynamics look like, and most importantly, get from them feedback on what are the common things that they're seeing so that we can then hopefully address that better under the performance, under the contract and performance. And then as the mayor points out, next time we go out for contract, then we can tighten up that contract a little bit with some performance oversight.
And also how to deal with those common areas. The open spaces.
The open space, yeah.
Which
I'd be
I
happy
think
to
my
help out,
understanding,
too.
just to clarify, I think those are open space easements, right? With the
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
So yeah,
It is still private property, but there's an open space easement over it.
right. I'm just trying to get to the root of what Karen's question was earlier, but I think that's the best way to describe that. All right. So with that, it seems to me like we're moving more towards maintain status quo, look at developing some kind of residents advisory committee to work on some better performance-driven metrics to gear up for going out to RFP when the Brightview contract comes up to try to get a better service level for the residents. Okay. Do we need a motion on that, or is that enough direction?
No,
Nope.
maintaining status quo, and
Staff
I think we
direction.
can understand the direction.
So you'll come back to us. Perfect. Yeah. With that, we'll take a 5-minute bathroom break. All right, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. We're starting with item number 5. Lisa, can we get a title readout followed by a staff report?
Item 5, potential changes to the medical cannabis dispensary ordinance and regulatory permit process. Mayor Toussaint, members of council, on August 27, 2018, the City Council adopted Ordinance 18332 to comprehensively regulate cannabis within the City of Solvang. And on October 22nd, 2018, the City Council adopted Resolution Number 181064, allowing one medical cannabis dispensary within the city. On December 10, 2018, the City Council approved the application and selection process and the associated fees. From January to February of this year, the city accepted cannabis applications. The city received 3 applications for a medical cannabis dispensary during the application period. 2 of the applicants were rejected for failing to obtain the owner acknowledgement required under Section 5435 of the Municipal Code. 1 of those applicants appealed, and that appeal is stayed pending council's action. The 3rd applicant was disqualified after staff determined the application to be deficient in several areas. That decision was also appealed recently by the applicant, and an agenda item will be brought to the June 10th meeting to set a date for that appeal hearing. At its March 25th, 2019 City Council meeting, the council directed staff to reprioritize and recommend changes in the application process, including consideration of other zones to open up more options for the location of a dispensary, and to relocate the landowner authorization requirement to a later point in the application process to avoid the perception that a single landowner has a veto power over applicants for dispensary permits. There were 3 main issues discussed by the City Council at the meeting on March 25th: land use, landowner authorization, and potential modifications to the application process to more clearly identify specific business standards desired by the council. As far as the land use aspect, Ordinance 18332 currently allows a medical dispensary use within the C3 zone district only. This was determined to be problematic as only one of the properties entertained the use, thereby creating unintended monopolization and control of the regulatory permit process. As such, the City Council expressed their desire to return free market competition to the process. In March, Council maintained the number of dispensaries to be maintained as 1. Given the perceived property monopolization, staff suggests the number of available properties be increased by revisiting the zoning issue. Staff recommends that the City Council return the land use component of the ordinance to the Planning Commission for consideration of both the C2 retail commercial and PO professional office zone districts in addition to the C3 zone. Review of future applications in these potential areas would require verification that the proposed location was not located within a 600-foot radius of a school providing instruction in kindergarten or any grades 1 through 12, a daycare center or youth center, in accordance with Section 5026 of the California Code of Regulations. The second issue was landowner authorization. Consistent with Title 16 and all other municipalities, Ordinance 18-332 required that an applicant provide landowner approval. In the opinion of staff, the addition of other available zone districts will be adequate to effectively achieve the desire of the City Council to increase free enterprise without removing or relocating the landowner authorization requirement. Staff did review the ordinances of a variety of cities, and the only one that we came across that varied landowner approval to a later point in the application process was West Hollywood. That city's application process provided that the landowner authorization could be submitted prior to license issuance if the location was secured after the application was made. It should be noted that West Hollywood, however, allows a substantial number of various types of cannabis businesses in numerous zones throughout the city. As far as the application process, staff determines 2 options could achieve the highest quality medical cannabis dispensary, most reflective of the desires of the Solvang community. One would be to include additional benchmark criteria in the application process as to the type of business model to be allowed. The expanded benchmark criteria would be utilized by staff during the qualification phase, and the random lottery method of selection of the permittee by the City Council would be retained. Or the development of a ranking system for use by the City Council during selection of the permittee. This would categorically rank the applicants and result in a top-scoring applicant who then receives the regulatory permit. It would be essential that both of the described scenarios are based on clear and objective standards. The ranking system may be a more transparent public process. However, it could place the city in a highly litigious position. Cities who have used a ranking system have been routinely sued by cannabis applicants on the basis of perceived unfair rankings. Staff would recommend, staff is looking to recommend the addition of C2 and/or PO zones as permittable zone districts, looking for a determination as to the landowner authorization requirement, and as to the council's choice of option to achieve desired dispensary characteristics regarding either benchmark criteria or a ranking system. Alternatively, the City Council could decide to reverse their decision to allow 1 medical cannabis dispensary and direct staff to prepare the appropriate ordinance and/or a resolution to rescind. And that concludes my staff report.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. With that, we'll go to public comment, or I'm sorry, is there any questions of the staff report from the council? No? All right.
I'm not sure if this is the right time, but I'm curious about the threat of litigation. Well, we'll just avoid that word altogether. If we use that ranking system.
I think I'll jump in on that. One of the trends that we have been seeing in the city attorney world is that the applicants who don't rank in the top or rank lower than the successful permittees will use those ranking systems to file litigation or otherwise contest the award of the permit by saying that they qualified as well on the ranking, and they contest the actual methodology in addition to actually not getting the permit. We had a breakout session at the City Attorneys Conference a couple weeks ago where the city attorneys who have been sued were sharing some of their experiences. And unfortunately, for cities, the dispensary applicants seem to be very well funded. They have an enormous amount of money to devote to litigation rather than just focusing on the application process. And the ones who are not successful in that process seem to be filing a lot of complaints, litigations, appeals, and so on. So it's just part of the legal landscape when you're giving a permit for something that has value to it. But in the particular cannabis dispensary world, we're seeing a lot of litigation popping up around the state.
Are there any other questions of the staff report? Okay, we'll go to public comment. I have no speaker slips. Jim, would you like to speak on this? Followed by Ed Skytt.
This is Jim Richardson. I hadn't really planned to come to speak, but as I thought about the dilemma that you're in, is that I believe that the possibility of changing the order of the space that the store goes into to after the application process, then have a random drawing to determine which will get the permit. That way there's no ranking, there's no tiering. It's just all the applicants gets a shot at a random drawing for the one location. And then it would be up to negotiation between that winner and the landowner. And there's also the possibility that over time, the C3 area could be expanded, or other property owners within the C3 area might change their minds or change the ownerships so there could be another opportunity to move to a different location. But my suggestion would be to do a random drawing or random raffle on the applicants. Number two, please do not consider going to a C2 zone or the PO zone. The C2 zone is at Alamo Pintado and Mission, basically. It's Nielsen's, it's the Mercantile, it's Montecito Bank, and just to the east or west of Montecito Bank. That's the C2 zones. The PO zones are just north of there, being a village by Village Lane and by Viborg, the hospital area and the physicians, plus just to the west of the Montecito Bank building is two PO zone properties, which are too close. Those properties are too close to residential areas should be granted. My recommendation is that you keep it in the C3 zone, and also that you do a reordering of the application process so that the requirement for a shop be after you have all the applicants in, and then have a random drawing and allow the winner of that random drawing to get the permit. Then he can negotiate whatever properties he can get to. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Ed Skytt.
Thank you, Mayor Toussaint, City Council members. Former Mayor Richardson hit a number of the items I was going to discuss. A, that the current C2 and PO are basically surrounded by residential neighborhoods. When the original process went out to the Planning Commission to come up with a spot, one of the designations was to have the location where it had the least amount of impact on the residential neighborhoods. That is the C3 at the west end of town. In regards to going back and discussing the monopolization of the property owner, on this one here, the one applicant is in escrow to purchase the property. If he purchased the property, he has the authorization to utilize the facility. It's not the current property owner's problem that one of the other applicants did not come and apply to buy the office. It's the other applicants, they had a chance to go in and buy the property. It's not the current property owners nor the current person who is in escrow for this. It's not their problem that the other property owner that has property that could be zoned for that has decided not to proceed with leasing the property. At this point in time, you gave a city planning commission direction. The planning commission came back with a proposal. The city council accepted the proposal. Now you are trying to change the horse in the middle of the stream to the detriment of the property owner who is looking to sell his piece of property, to the detriment of the applicants, because they don't know, they are up in the air right now. And to me, you should just say, okay, this is the way we decided to go. Let us proceed with that and let the cards fall as they may. We're having allowed one applicant in the valley, or in Solvang. As a side note, regards to the cannabis issue is, when I was on the city council about, I want to say the early 2004, 2005, if you go back and take a look in the records of what is allowed in the C3 and M1 zoning are adult type establishments. And if you start allowing cannabis to be moved around to other, you are leaving the door open to somebody who wants to put an adult type business in another area. I would say you set your rules, stay by the rules, and if it doesn't work out in the long run, then you can go back and reassess the rules. But right now, you're changing, like I said, you're changing the rules in the middle of the game. And that's not fair to anybody around. And I thank you very much.
Okay. See no further public comment. We'll take this back to the council for discussion and action. Chris, would you like to start?
Not really, but I will. This is another one of those issues I'm just not happy with. I think that the whole process didn't really achieve the intent, certainly not at this council. And I wish we could change it, but as Ed Skytt points out, it's another mess that we're stuck to fix. By the way, I want to say thank you to staff. I think this is one of the better summaries and write-ups that I've seen, and I really look forward to seeing more from Lisa Martin. Kudos to you. Well done. I mean, I just soon start over if I could, but given, I would like to follow your staff recommendation. I think that was well done, except for item number 2. Sorry, I lost track of the paperwork, where it's talking about the ranking. I think Dave did a great job of explaining the problems of following that.
Oh, page 22 of the packet. There's the 2 options. 1 and 2, you have the benchmark criteria item and then the development of a ranking system. But
Right. I wanted to call attention to number 1. Unfortunately, they're not really numbered in such a way where I can just say, I guess it's 3.1. But I think 3.1 made a good point of allowing the council to try to select, or at least shape the selection of the best candidate for the location. I had the good fortune of seeing some really well-run facilities down in West Hollywood. For whatever reason, they are the leader in medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. I think that they've done a great job of at least hearing the community and trying to satisfy the needs of the community. So from that standpoint, I was down there, I looked at a few shops, and there's one in particular I felt, I think you said it best, it was like walking into an Apple store. It was clean, it was really well run and managed, very secure. That's the kind of thing I would like to see. And if I could figure out a way as a council member to help shape that through benchmarking, then I would like to see that done.
Okay. Karen?
Well, I think Ed Skytt hit the nail on the head when he said that we put a process together, we voted on it, we had it going, and to change in the middle of it would not be the right thing to do. I am having concerns regarding transparency and communications with applicants, and the sudden decision to change locations of where we might want to put the dispensaries. So I'd like to stick to what we originally decided. I think that's the right thing to do, and I believe that a property owner has the right to sell to whoever they would like to sell to. You cannot force a property owner to put in a business that they don't want to put in, and I think the C3 zone is the only area that would be appropriate for this type of a business.
Robert?
I would disagree with Jim. I think there's a better area for it. Would be Lompoc, but be my favorite. But there's not much we can do about that. We've already got people appealing this right now. I don't want to change it. I was on the planning commission when we went through this. It's the only logical place, and at the time when we were voting on this, is if we have to have it, this is where it's going to go. I've never wanted it in this town. I still don't want it, whether it's medicinal or whether it's recreational. I don't like it here. This is not what Solvang is all about, but this is the people that we've elected in the state of California, and there's nothing we can do about that now, but whether it be housing or marijuana or whatever, we're being force-fed lots of things by Sacramento. So the C3 stays where it is. Let the appeals work which way they're going to work. I guess if this person still is trying to buy this building, correct?
I don't know.
This is one of the applicants. It's in escrow. Somebody can answer that
I mean,
question?
at this point,
We're
every
just
applicant,
discussing.
one thing you do really need to realize, every applicant has been denied.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else you need to think. We have, as far as I'm concerned, everyone might appeal it, but every applicant has been denied. Am I?
Every
not-
applicant has been denied, and you have 2 appeals.
And they're going to litigate, probably.
I
Okay. I like Jim's idea of a lottery. I think a lottery is a great idea, as long as everybody is on a level playing field and they all have meet the same criteria. Then to do it as a lottery, I mean, how can you say that there's favoritism when you're just drawing a name? So I say C3, and I say do a lottery if that's the case. That's my opinion.
Daniel.
I think things have changed as far as my understanding is the county has opened up 8 places that are going to be able to open up for retail sale of marijuana in the future. Has anyone else been made aware? 8 county spots that you're going to be able to sell retail marijuana. In the unincorporated areas. Okay, so that is true. Okay, so my opinion is, since that is open up and there's 8 spots that are open in the unincorporated areas, why are we even discussing this? Why don't we just ban the sale of marijuana completely from the city, and we can just let the retail spots open up in the unincorporated areas, which they're going to be able to do medical, retail, whatever they want to do outside of the city. Then we don't have to deal with any of this, and we keep marijuana out of the city of Solvang.
I mean, gee whiz, it's just, you can drive 14 miles from here and buy whatever you want in a store. Anyway.
Okay. Well, I'm also a fan of the staff report that we have here. One of my biggest concerns with this, with only picking one zone and having generally one property owner, is it kind of gets rid of the whole free market concept, and that is addressed here in the staff report. So what what I'm open to is reevaluating the zones. You have the C2 or the PO zones. When this originally came up, one of the ideas that it was actually Karen Waite and I last year that brought this up, and the original zones that we even discussed were the C2 and the PO zones. So I think a mixture of potentially looking at 2 would basically increase some competition, and then also, like in the city of West Hollywood, having that landowner authorization requirement come later in the process, I think would also be appropriate. I understand the issues around the ranking system and things like that, but there's plenty of other great ways. For example, we have the lotto system that was kind of mentioned here earlier. The benchmark criteria, things like that, could also be outsourced to to a consultant, such as I think we had HDL that was originally helping us with some of these with the cannabis ordinance. Shift it off our plate. Let them make the decision. Those are all things that I'd be open to doing. But with that, following the staff report, what I'm interested in doing is considering the additional zone to allow some more free market, moving the landowner authorization requirement to the end of the process. At the end of the day, if the landowner doesn't want that applicant in there, then they don't have to rent it to them. And it very well might be that you can set all these standards and you don't end up with anything there. So you could come up with 3 different applicants, and they could all go to the different available properties, and all get denied by the landowners, and we get nothing. I think Robert would be happy with that, and I think Dan will be happy with that. But unfortunately, that's how the process works. And yes, we cannot force it. But what I'm looking for is the best process to increase, free enterprise and drive competition and get the best possible product for the community here. So I'm happy to move the current kind of staff report in the way that it flows here. I think it's very number 1, recommendation. A, the addition of C2 and PO zones, permittable zone districts, so we can evaluate those. Number 2, landowner authorization requirement can come later in the process. And then number 3 would be basically choosing some kind of benchmark criteria. I think Councilmember Dearness mentioned a little earlier about kind of what he's looking for. It was MedMen that you went and visited that had kind of the Apple Store kind of feeling. But these are all kind of performance metrics that would fit within the vision of what the council is looking to allow into the community here. all that kind of material could be handled by either a lotto system or being outsourced to a company such as HDL. I believe even in the application permit fee, we could probably require that the applicants that make it that far in the process pay for HDL to review their application and make that determination. I'm not sure. I'm just throwing ideas out there with regard. That's the only area where I'm trying to figure out is the best way to handle.
Well, I think if you're going to outsource anything to HDL, they're going to need real clear standards as to what it is that you're looking for, whether they be benchmarks regarding security plan and so on, meeting the 80% of the state standards that we have done at the staff level and looking at some of them. HDL certainly can do that, but they're going to need real clear direction, because ultimately, if they make a selection and they hand you 3 applicants and you flip a coin, do a lottery, whatever random drawing that you have in that situation, the process is still going to be subject to potential litigation, in that the people who were not selected will come back and say, well, that person didn't meet the benchmark, they should never have been one of the 3. So you need to have extreme clarity on what those benchmarks are going to be to avoid that from happening.
Right. Which we wouldn't have here today. We would have to craft those further and provide that.
Correct.
I'm just trying to talk about just the process right
Correct.
now. But yeah, so I mean, I am, page 19 of the packet, that's what I'm interested in, and I think this is a great staff report. I think it clearly outlines things, and I think we need to reconsider, especially now that each one of the candidates has been denied.
Okay, so are there applicants out there that you all have been talking to that I'm not aware of?
So even at the last meeting when we did have this, I did say that I did talk with a couple of the candidates regarding their concerns about this.
The answer for me is no.
Which is
I
just
don't know
fine.
any of them.
So they're not actually applicants, but there are people that might be potential applicants that you all have had conversations with?
Why do you
or-
keep accusing us of
Well, because it
talking
just,
with
to
them?
me, it just seems that the sudden desire to change locations, the sudden push for this is coming out of the blue to me. A couple
No,
things
we've
have
been
come out
talking
of the
about
blue.
this for a month or two now.
Changing of locations has
The changing of locations came from the last meeting when I was pointing out some of the issues with this process with regard to creating kind of a monopoly type situation with only allowing one zone. Most cities don't have to deal with that. It just happens that we are very small and there's only one zone picked, and there's unintended consequences of only allowing one small zone to essentially, have a certain, business allowed in their area. That does, take away competition and the free market.
Okay, so how, they're zoned adult. Basically, you're zoned adult. So are you gonna be so free and liberal with the free market if someone wants to put in a strip club? I mean, we can take it that, we can take it
Again, that
there.
has nothing to do with what's on the agenda tonight, and
Well, it's zoned adult. It's zoned adult.
right.
And so, we could go down that road if you want to start saying, opening up the free market for this.
Again,
I
Karen-
just felt that was the
No,
most
that-
appropriate
Karen-
place, and
This
so did
argument.
this, so did
Karen,
the,
it's
so did
it's
the
zoned
council.
it's zoned adult. It's been zoned adult for however many years. You have to realize that. But do you see a strip club down there? Did we put that there? Are we
No.
asking to put that there
No,
tomorrow?
and I wouldn't want one there, but I also don't want to I also don't think that it'd be appropriate to have a medical marijuana or cannabis dispensary any place else other than the C3, which our planning commission approved and we agreed on originally.
And then that's your position, but again, I don't know
That's
what that
my
has to do with
position.
adult use
Get back
permitting.
to your-
Well,
Dave, can
adult
you
use.
just so that can you explain this the C3 zone and having just so that people understand?
What are you looking for an explanation? The permitted uses within a
yes.
C3 zone? I'd have to pull up the zoning code to give you a precise listing of what they are, but C3, the uses that are down there right now are clearly authorized uses under
Right.
the zoning code. The adult businesses, adult-oriented businesses, that is, my understanding, is in a permitted use within that zone, because under the Constitution, First Amendment, you can't ban them altogether. It's First Amendment expressive activity. That was the zone that was designated for that type of
Yeah.
usage.
Did this
Also-
council do that?
Oh, that was done 15 years ago, probably.
Okay, thank you.
But the other use, obviously, is medicinal cannabis dispensaries. There may be other ones that I'm missing in the code that are not currently being used on that. There are industrial types of uses that may be appropriate there. But those are the kinds of uses that are appropriate and permitted under the C3 zone.
And that goes exactly with what I'm saying, is that regardless of what ordinance we put in place today, at the end of the day, we cannot force the property owner to put in a particular dispensary, or anything like that. You can still go through the whole thing and they could say no to it. Just like the reason why you don't see a strip club down there is because probably the property owner said, I don't want a strip club here. They're not going to rent it out to someone that's going to do that. Now, could they do it tomorrow? It sounds like they could.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's one of the permitted uses, or if it's a conditional permitted use, that is something that they could do if the property owner wanted to do it. I pulled up the municipal code, give you some other examples of other types of things that are permitted in there that are very unlikely to ever occur there. You could have a bus terminal there. You could have a printing plant, automobile sales, repair, and service. You could have, let's see, a sign painting store is permitted there, small animal hospitals, recycling centers. So many of these things are permitted uses in the C3 zone, but they're not necessarily, because of the market economics of it, going to be located there. It's just, it's an area where they can be located.
And that's all I'm trying to explain with this, is that we can go through this whole process, and again, the landowners could choose not to put it in. That's regardless of what we do. Every applicant here today would have been denied on the very first step of the process if they didn't have landowner authorization. Just like you saw, the very first, 2 of them got denied immediately simply because they didn't have that. The third one then got denied going through the other sections of the vetting process, and I'm not fully aware of every reason why they got denied, but that they went through that vetting process and they were denied. So today we have 0 candidates, 0 applicants that are currently in consideration.
So it's working.
Let me qualify
Besides
that.
appeals.
You have appeals.
So that's part of our process.
I don't want you all necessarily to prejudge the results of those because you haven't been presented with the information at that point. One of them obviously is appealing in part on the basis that they do not believe that the landowner consent should be considered at this point. That is one of the appeal points. The other one is appealing on some other points. The one that did have landowner consent is appealing on the denial based on other issues. Those will be coming to you. We've held one in abeyance pending consideration of what you're talking about tonight. The other one was recently received. There are other things that you'll be seeing in the next couple days offline. There's been a public records request for a bunch of documentation on that. We're going to be setting an appeal date on June 10th. It may be that you decide to hold that one in abeyance as well, pending this. But at some point, these appeals are going to come to you, or those applicants who have filed the appeals are going to say, I'm not going to pursue the appeal because ... whatever the reasons they are. So those decisions are not final at this point. Ultimately, those 2 are going to be resolved by the council in some way.
I got a question. Clearly, 3 people were denied. There's still an appeal process, right? So we can't stop this process and say no, because we have to allow them to go through the appeal process, correct?
Well, you can stop it. It's just a question of your litigation tolerance.
That's what I'm getting at. So it's better to let them go forward with this appeal process, and at that point, perhaps revisit it and say, is this worth it? Is the litigation risk worth all this nonsense? That's where I'm coming, right? First of all, to your point, the only reason why I brought this back in support of the mayor is because I felt that the whole process itself was done in a poor way. Yes, I believe that is the ideal location, that general area, but the fact that there was only one location and that the landowner had the right to preempt the whole process the way that it happened, I was disturbed by it. I thought that was wrong. So, yeah, more power to the person who decided to make an offer on the building. But I thought that was kind of unfair. Just from an ideological standpoint, I didn't think that was fair. And it basically took the council out of the whole decision-making process. Again, something that bothered me. That's where I'm coming from. And no, I don't know anybody, I don't know any of the 3. I'm sure they're all nice people and they have the best interests of the community at heart. I really don't know.
I would agree. I mean, I agree with the free market opening up and having extra zones. What I would really like to see is the possibility of getting rid of it altogether. I don't see the purpose of having it in the city. I think if the county's going to open it up and they're going to have 8 locations, you're going to have one in San Ynez, Los Olivos, somewhere else, and that to me is close enough for them to be able to purchase what they need to purchase. So I would love to rid ourselves of this. I don't know what the legal ramifications are since, like you said, we are in the process.
Yeah, and what is the upside of this? I mean, this is, well, I know that argument. The question is how big, how much, and is it worth the litigation risk and the security risks and all that? Nobody's really done a study on that. Because I've heard over and over again.
We've already had long conversations about this before, so I don't want to necessarily go all back into that. But I think, Jim, you had, I'll allow,
I'd like to say something.
I gotta go, it's too late, but I got a lot to say about it.
What I see tonight is a different mood from the council I served on that allowed marijuana to come into the city. And if you recall that there's a way to eliminate that overall problem that you're suffering tonight, and that's to issue a new resolution. The resolution that determines how many shops will be allowed in the city. Right now, that resolution says 1. All you have to do is call the resolution back to it and vote to return it to 0. Then you'll have no problem. You'll have the pot shops can be in the county, some other place. We don't have the problem with marijuana now if there's no shops allowed. So that's my offer. I hope you consider that because there was a 4-1 vote on the last one. Now I can see a possible 3-2 vote on this council tonight. So I would like you to consider to bring back the resolution as to determine how many pot shops will be allowed in the city. Thank you.
Well, I'm sitting here listening to Daniel Johnson, and his comments are making a lot of sense. Just knowing that we have the county land surrounding us, and knowing what they are open to and what they may allow, could possibly eliminate our need to supply that type of a service here in Solvang. However, I've also heard from residents of Solvang that really do benefit from the medical uses of cannabis and feel very strongly that we should have a local clinic. So I still want to stick by my initial vote and suggestion and agreement with our Planning Commission that we go ahead and still go with the 1 in C3.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to correct something that I said before. The adult-oriented businesses are only allowed in the M zone, which is right next to the C3 zone. So it's down in that same area. I wanted to make sure I was correct on that. So
yeah,
to the extent it matters.
The point was that it exists, but is it there?
Correct.
That's the only point. All right. So with that, I mean, and one of the things I oftenly ponder is, what I will clearly, I think what I made very clear is I wasn't very happy with the way that the process was, got dialed out from last year. But one of the things I do ponder is possibly doing a cessation on it for a period of time, reevaluating this this whole process, coming up with something a little more concrete with the concerns that we have today, and then reopening it back up for an application. And right now you have 3 candidates that have already been denied. So is there any? Yeah.
You've got 2 appeals going on right now.
You would still go through those.
You've got C3. You've got your 2 appeals. Let's wait and see which course that takes. Mm-hmm. Maybe those appeals are overruled, and we can just let this thing slide.
I think either way, part of our process is to hear out the appeals.
True.
It's whether or not we grant the appeal, right? Because that would then come to the city council.
Sure. I mean, since the question was raised, does the city council have the power to just pull that ordinance? The city council has that power.
We also don't want to get sued, too.
Well, it's what I said before, questioning your litigation tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
You have the potential of being sued by repealing the ordinance and having 3 candidates who had put time, energy, and money into the process who are upset about it. You could keep the ordinance in place and have 2 people file the appeal, be upset with you about whatever the result is. There's very little that you can do to 100% avoid litigation in this situation, or at least the potential for litigation. I don't want to presuppose that there's going to be lawsuits filed. It's just it's a continuum of risk depending on what the council decides to do.
Okay.
So I mean, with that, I still stand by what it is, and I would love to reconsider, the process that we follow through and reopen up for application process and give everyone a fair shot again, given the new process that we would put in place. That's really where I was going with this. Any other comments?
I would agree. I think we either open it up to having it more of a free market. I can't see, I think you have to look at other options, other zones, or what I would really like to do is rid it and get it out of the city completely. From what I'm hearing, that may be the most expensive avenue. I don't know legal wise, but I just don't see the purpose of it with the way the county is going. And frankly, I think in the future we're not going to have a lot of control over this anyway when the state comes down with a lot of their rules. So I just don't see that we need it in the city right now. But if we have to, or if we're going to go forward with it, I definitely want more of a free market atmosphere.
Let's vote on something. Saying let's vote on something.
Well, let me ask a clarifying question first, because I'm not sure what I'm voting on. So number one, we need to let the appeal process go to reduce the risk of litigation. That was the
it's still part of our process.
Right.
So you need to let that process go through.
2, 1 or 2 of these people might actually become qualified, right?
Yeah, I mean, the council could take a look at the appeal, say that it has merit, and then say that application should be considered and bring it back. So that is a possibility for you.
Okay.
One or the other of the 2 appeals. The third one didn't appeal, as far as I know, and their time to appeal is passed.
The one that is trying to buy the building, is it a contingency on the success of their application?
Don't know. We haven't gotten into their private property negotiations between the party. They do have landowner consent, we believe. We've heard rumors that they're in escrow, but we don't know the actual details of their transaction with the property owner.
Okay. Is one of the appellants the one that's making a purchase play on that property?
I don't know.
I mean,
I understand one of them has landowner consent. That's what I know.
So that's why they're appealing, because they.
Their escrow is almost certainly contingent on them obtaining the business license.
Would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
I'll let you come up and speak in the microphone.
My name is Tiffany Carrari. I'm with Margolin and Lawrence, and we represent one of the applicants that currently has the appeal that's stayed.
Can you say which one?
The one that did not have landowner consent.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
So these are the facts, and it sounds like we need to let this play out a little longer before bringing this back and making a decision. Is that right? Because we can't really move.
Well, that is an option open to council. You could certainly say, okay, we're not going to stay the appeals that are currently before us. We'll suspend this discussion until after the appeals are heard. Once you make the determinations on the appeal, then you have a clean slate one way or another. You've either granted the appeal or you've denied both appeals, and then you can revisit this at that time. If you want us to concurrently do this type of thing, then we really need to have clear direction as to what it is that you want us to do while we're bringing the appeals back to you, because you're going to see those in the near term as opposed to the far term. You'll be setting a date at your next meeting with the most recent appeal that came in. The first appeal that came in that Ms. Carrari was mentioning, and she represents, that one has been held in abeyance pending a discussion of this matter. So council can give us direction, okay, bring the appeals back, let's get them done, hold off on discussing this until we're done with that. And that's an option the council could do as well.
Could you repeat that last option?
Sure. You can just tell staff, bring back the appeals. Let's get them back with all due speed, and we'll consider the number of dispensaries, the zoning, and the application process after those appeals are resolved one way or another. It may be that you decide after the appeals are done that one of them is acceptable. You grant that and it goes forward, and then you don't have to revisit all this. You may also decide that both appeals do not have merit, and then you are left with 0 applicants, and then you can come back to this process.
Well, I mean, and I'll just say part of my pursuit of changing this, reevaluating this process here, is just about having good policy, even for the future. There's plenty of things, like I don't want everyone just to be reactive over what's happening right now. It's also just about being proactive and thinking a little bit further down the road. Yes, you have applicants that are in the process right now. We need to go through that process. But at the end of the day, we are still in charge of creating, good proactive policy for the city. And for all you know, that applicant could go through the whole thing and then all of a sudden decide they don't want to do the project. They could also not meet the performance metrics of the thing. There'd be some kind of issue with security. There could be, anything that comes up later on in the process, because also part of that thing is they could be out of there within 1 year. That is built into that that ordinance as well. Am I correct, Dave?
I'm sorry, I was responding to a message. Can you repeat that, please?
So I think even part of our process is there are certain things that they are subject to. Even if a dispensary went in tomorrow, that business is still subject to audit and other things that go on. And for any reason, we have a clause in our ordinance, I believe, that within a year we could all of a sudden determine that we don't want it there.
Absolutely. We've got significant regulatory oversight. The permits last a year. They can be revoked for failure to meet a whole bunch of different issues. So that's part of the regulatory process already.
So again, this is why I'm thinking more proactive and future thinking, and it's just about having a good policy for the council to have in the future, regardless of what, I mean, for all you know, this could come up a year from now, it could come up 5 years from now. So that's why I want to just craft the right policy. Now, through the current processes we currently have, any one of them, we could grant all 3 their appeal and let them all go back. I don't, I'm just saying anything could come of that. But at the end of the day, I still want us to have a good policy surrounding this. So with that, I would like to move that we move forward with the staff recommendation on these policies. And in the meantime, I would like to bring the applicants up to hear their appeals and finish going through that project. I believe we owe that.
Okay, so the appeal, the most recent appeal is not before you. It's not on the agenda tonight. We'll be bringing it back at the next meeting. You can give direction to also have staff consider and recommend a date for the other appeal. You could certainly hear them on the same night. You could hear them on different nights. It's just a matter of workload. So that's a possibility. But to set the appeal date tonight, that's not on the agenda for either of those appeals.
But we can give direction to bring that back. Okay. So again, with that, I would like to move forward with staff recommendation, page 19 of the packet. You have A, B, and C here. I'd really like to just craft a good policy regardless of what happens, and then direct staff to come back with the appeal type processes.
Okay, what I don't want to see is for us to basically change an ordinance just so that we can find a place for a particular cannabis dispensary, which is kind of how this is sounding to me.
Okay. Again, I really could care less about who goes through the process, who comes in tomorrow. I'm only concerned with process here, so I'm a little peeved with the accusation. Yes, one last.
Sure. I think one thing to consider is that letting the appeals go forward before considering or making changes to the ordinance is that the appeals that are currently in process would be based on the current ordinance. So, I mean, from my client's perspective, they will almost certainly lose their appeal because they're appealing based on this landowner consent requirement, which is a part of the ordinance, and we just don't have it. So unless the other appeal is denied, then we still have the problem of that person moving forward and opening a dispensary and, having this landowner monopoly situation. Our position would be that you guys should, of course, consider other zones. Barring that, if you guys want the C3 zone, I think, a lottery and then letting the landowner decide whether they want to work with the person that's chosen from the lottery or not solves the problem.
And that's what I like about the lottery system. It just, at the end of the day, that property owner does not have to work with whatever candidates get through the vetting system.
Yeah, I'm not, I think we have to let the appeal process go forward, but this is just frustrating.
Can we just let the
I'm
appeal
not happy.
process go forward and bring this back?
I'm not trying to stop the appeal process.
No,
Again,
but yours is twofold. You want to accept everything on page 19, as well as let the appeal process go, as opposed to just letting the appeal process go forward.
Right.
I'm still just focusing on
Good policy.
on
is
good
what it is.
policy, and that's really what this discussion is about, period. The appeals process will still carry on.
In fact, if the appeals process goes through and it ends up they don't qualify, we could actually go back and say, we don't want it at all, and we could get rid of the entire thing.
I understand.
if
So
we
did
want
you make
to.
a motion?
Somebody make a motion.
I thought you made
I
the
was
motion.
moving that we follow the recommendations on page 19 of the staff recommendation.
You were moving, or you made a motion?
He's making a motion.
Yeah, I said move, so that's the same thing.
I feel moved.
What I heard was the mayor made a motion.
Okay, that's what I thought.
For staff recommendation, require landowner authorization later in the process, benchmarking to improve quality with lottery, and bring back the applicant appeals.
Okay, then I second
You
that.
want
But
A- you want
was
A-
also the C2 and PO zone
You want
included
A,
in
B,
that?
and C, right, and D, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you said that. I second that.
Staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Yes, I just second that.
Okay, it's been seconded.
Mayor Toussaint,
Yes.
Councilmember Dearness,
Yes.
Clark,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Wait,
No.
Okay. Passes
motion passes
Four.
3-2.
3-2. Okay. With that, move on to item number 6. Lisa, can we get a title report and staff report?
Item 6, agreement with City of Goleta for library services.
Yeah. Are there any library fans in the house?
Okay.
Let me be clear. First of all, I sit on the economic committee, the ad hoc economic committee, and this sounds like
All right,
one of
Chris,
those
Chris, I'm going to
questions.
limit this. We're moving on to item number 6 right now. So, if you want to discuss one of your constituents, issues you have, that's fine. Anyway, item number 6. Lisa, can we get a title readout and staff report?
Item 6, agreement with City of Goleta for library services.
All right, given the time, I'll try to be brief here. So over the past, I'll call it 6 months, a little longer than that, there's been conversations about transition from the city of Santa Barbara to the city of Goleta for provision of management services at the Solvang Library, as well as the Buellton Library, which it also includes the San Ynez and Los Olivos small branches. As the council's aware, there's been cost increases over the years. The cost of maintaining services at the Solvang Library have been slowly placed more and more on the city. If you go back to 1996, the city started funding it around that time at $30,000 annually to cover what was otherwise a shortfall of the county amount of funding that was provided for library services in the county system. In the current fiscal year that we're in, that ends June 30, we budgeted $173,000 to make up the shortfall this year for existing library services. In transitioning to Goleta, the cost will again increase beyond our current funding level and require Solvang to backstop the difference. The estimates at this point in time from the city of Goleta in partnership with the county for fiscal year 2019-20, which would begin July 1, shows a total shortfall of $216,000. To help ease the transition, the county has proposed providing one-time funding to the Solvang branch at a 1-to-1 cost split. This means the county would put in approximately an additional $37,000 for next fiscal year. This leaves about $5,000 remaining for the city of Solvang as an increase from the $173,000 we have in this fiscal year. However, this does not mean that the following year, without any further commitment from the county or another revenue source, that Solvang would need to cover the full $216,000 plus any cost increases that may result from routine operating expense increases. The Solvang Library is a valuable resource in the community and provides a handful of services. For this reason, staff recommends the City Council approve the agreement with Goleta to provide library management services. There are 3 alternatives presented to you in your staff report. Those would be, one would be to decline the contract with Goleta, which would effectively close the library until other options are explored, approve the agreement and direct staff to negotiate with Goleta for reduced hours of services to reduce costs, or C, approve the agreement, maintain current operational status quo, and direct staff to review long-term strategies to stabilize cost increases into the future. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
So I think what I'm hearing is this matching fund policy. It's only limited to this one fiscal year.
As of right now, that's proposed as a one-time.
Got it.
I am
So we
having-
couldn't fund for multiple years to try to take advantage of that matching and get this off of our plate for a little while.
According to the county, as of right now, no, it's a one-time. I am meeting with the county executive tomorrow morning, and this is one of the items on my agenda to discuss.
Okay. Well, it's still very generous of them. Is there any other questions of the staff report?
No.
Yes.
Okay. Karen?
So I'm looking right now at this, I'm a little distracted here. Solvang to pay the actual cost for operations to Goleta annually at the beginning of the fiscal year, plus a $35,000 management fee. So explain that to me in a little more detail.
So Goleta has estimated what their costs are for managing basically the oversight, the overhead contribution, and so that represents their estimate. If you go to, I'm trying to get to the page here that provides the breakdown. If you go to page 83 within your staff report, that is Exhibit D of the proposed agreement, and in that it breaks down all of the revenue sources as well as all of the expenditure line items. And at the bottom then, it has a general government fee for Goleta of $13,078.45, a financing fee of $4,300, and then an overall library management fee of $17,997, or an admin fee of approximately 11.8%. Now, all of the expenditures at this point in time are preliminary. This is them giving their estimates for the year. They have conservatively estimated the variety of line items that are simply unknowns: building maintenance, janitorial services, so on and so forth. And at the end of the fiscal year, what they would then do is an accounting, and then we would shore up any differences. So if the city paid over, or they overestimated, then we would get a refund back for the subsequent fiscal year. If there was any shortage, then we would owe them any of that difference.
Okay. Maybe it would be good to hear public comment, because I just kind of want to understand.
I was just allowing questions of the staff report first.
I know. Yeah, no, I'm just my comments. I can't really ask any more questions right at this point, because I'd like to.
So with that, we'll move on to public comment. Would anyone like to speak? I believe Chuck Stacy left the room earlier. He did turn a speaker slip, and Shirley Stacy, but they both left. Would anyone like to speak on this?
Hi, good evening. I'm Dana Grassi with the City of Goleta. I know it's a late night here. Karen, just to help out with your question, that $35,000 you see there is that support time materials. This is the fee that, as Mr. Gasway was saying, that the City of Goleta is conservatively estimating. This would be the Goleta staff time at City Hall in those 3 areas, general government, finance, and library, to support the Solvang Library. And so what we're going to be implementing is a time tracking through employees, timesheets whenever staff are working on something, and supporting the Solvang Library. For example, the Goleta Library Director in her time spent, perhaps providing oversight for the provision of the various materials, books, audio visual materials for the patrons. She would track her time. And so at the end of the fiscal year, we would take a look at all of that staff time, supporting the Solvang Library. And so our goal is to be transparent in that way, so that you can see exactly where the costs are going. So I hope that helps out. But I also just want to add that the City of Goleta is excited for this transition. It has been a very busy first year for us, learning how to manage our own library, but we're lucky to have an experienced library director helping us along the way. And the timing was good, and it was also bad that we were asked to also manage the Solvang and Buellton libraries, but it's good because we want to be seen as a greater partner in the region. Libraries are, of course, a big deal, and we certainly have a unique way of running libraries in Santa Barbara County. But we're excited, and we have year one under our belts almost, and so we're looking forward to expanding that Zone 4 service area and starting to provide services to Solvang. So please let me know if you have any questions for me.
Yeah, I do have questions. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, okay, so that explained that. So I was just concerned about possible reimbursement for fees that maybe we weren't going to use all of that money, or you didn't use all of that money, the library would get reimbursed, or we would get reimbursed. So when it comes to costs and allocations, because I know that had been an issue in the past, between expenses for Solvang versus Buellton and Los Olivos. Do you think that that's been fairly broken down?
Yes, I believe so, and we're going to do our best each year to provide the proposed costs in advance of the new fiscal year. So Goleta staff would sit down with Solvang staff and take a look at those proposed costs, run down the line items, determine where savings have been realized or otherwise where costs, unforeseen costs may have been realized, and of course, the City of Goleta is open to negotiating too. If City of Solvang were to want an increased level of service provision at the library, that's something that could be discussed as well, and then Goleta would cost that out for you so you could see. But to answer your question, yes, we do want to be transparent, and also in the time tracking, staff will be asked to provide details as to what they were doing, so you can see. We could always run a report using our software, so you could see exactly what we did for the library that year.
Great, thank you.
Which I think is one of the bigger issues we were having last year with Santa Barbara, is not really knowing what that management fee was. Now we have a transparent management fee, so thank you for solving that problem.
Well,
how many library locations does Goleta have?
We just have the Goleta Library
Just
right
one.
now, just that one, yeah. So these.
So my question is, have you looked at the possible cost savings if we consolidated to one library here in the Valley? Has that been discussed at all? I mean, I'm just thinking Goleta has one.
Yeah. I have not thought about that. We have not had conversations about that idea. So I think that, the idea was for that Zone 4 service area, which is the Goleta zone, to take on additional libraries, because Zone 4 is the only zone currently that has just the one library. Zones 1, 2, and 3 have more than one, and so.
Maybe that's something that, David, you could take into your negotiations if we go that direction.
That is one of the reasons, one of the alternatives that we provided for you in the staff report. That would be an option for us to look at.
So who's setting the strategic vision and goals going forward, and when will that be done? Is that Goleta, or is it us together with Goleta?
I think it's us together with them, and as well as along with Buellton and
Okay, so
friends
it's
of
a
the
group
library
effort.
groups.
And then the time frame for that is sometime within the next 12 months, within the next fiscal year.
If that's council's direction.
So in other words, you could get it done sooner?
I really don't know what's possible for us to get done in what time frames. I haven't yet had the conversations out there more broadly to see what levels of interest are in, as Mr. Johnson pointed out, a regional library here in the Santa Ynez Valley.
I think we need a longer term
And
plan.
I'll just add to that. I mean, you have on what is it, page 58 and 57. you have the alternatives that are there.
No, I saw that. It's option
Yeah.
3, and I just want to know what the longer-term plan is for the library
So
system.
one of the primary goals last year of the library committee was to find a different solution, because right before we're under Santa Barbara's management. So this is just kind of following through with that direction that was started last year. If the council pursues to direct staff to look at more regional approach options for here, then that could either be included in this motion here. But even so, we still need to make a decision regarding the contract with Goleta. Is that my understanding? And then also through the council visioning process, you could talk about regional type
We
solutions.
should wait for that opportunity.
That'd be another opportunity to
Okay.
insert that in there.
Are we going to open up for discussion, or do we have any more questions?
Are there any other questions of the staff report? We had public comment. I think we only had one.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
If I could add, I mean, Buellton, there is a per capita funding that we get that we split directly in half with Buellton based on population. We feel that we do a little bit more on this end than Buellton does on their end, but it would be a bit of a fight without ruffling feathers to try and get more money away from Buellton. That would be something that we would do through the county, in lobbying the county to get more of that. Do we want to have that fight? I don't know. Buellton is a partner. They're on this team, so I think there's other ways going forward to support with this lovely valley that we live in, and so many neat, wonderful people to bump the donations up, and to figure out other ways, creative ways to get more money into this library. Maybe not so much, I mean, obviously I want to put what we feel that we want to support the library with our money as well, but I think there's other things we can do, because I want to personally increase some of these donations and some of the other things to make this thing work.
Okay.
I'm staking everything on making this work, and I would actually like to use the option 3, which is approve the contract with Goleta, maintain the status quo, and establish a strategic goal for review of services in a future date. I like that better than just approving the contract with Goleta.
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay, I'll make a motion then. May I?
All right. Yep.
Make the motion.
I'll second that.
I would have, thank you.
It's been moved and seconded.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint,
Yes.
Councilmember Dearness,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Wait.
Yes.
All right. Passes 5-0. With that, we will move on to, let's see, we have basic committee reports. And we also have Councilmember AB 1234, and I believe the league dinner that we had since the prior meeting would qualify as something we'd have to disclose.
I'm sorry, say that again?
So you have AB 1234,
Yes.
right? And I believe that we have to disclose if we went to some function that was paid for by the city. So if we went to a league dinner.
You're supposed to report back on anything for which you
Okay.
received reimbursements, all right, so.
Okay. So I'll just start off by just reporting that I attended the league quarterly dinner in Paso Robles. Very nice event. And we also had Robert Clark that was there. Chris, I think you had a family issue, so you couldn't make it last minute. And we had David Gassaway there as well. Let's see. Anyway, so I just wanted to clear that up before it's forgotten about. Council comments, right? Or that's next. Okay, so committee reports. Does anyone have any reports on any committees that they sit on?
I do.
Okay.
Just that I'll be at the CLAC meeting in June at Lake Cachuma. I think it's on the, not 22nd. I have it on my calendar, but there's a meeting of the CLAC, which is the money people for the library, and I'll be attending that meeting. That's all I have.
Okay.
I met with the San Ynez CSD, or sewer district, and we discussed the idea of outsourcing or working more closely with them. And I know that you've been in discussions too. Dave Gassaway's been in discussions with them. And what I'd like to do is direct the staff to explore that more seriously and get back to us on what that would involve. And does it make sense for the pros and cons of consolidating or outsourcing some part or all of our operations to them? It doesn't mean that we have to do it. I just want to explore that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great topic for the retreat, because I think that is big. We are in conversations with them routinely right now because of the wastewater treatment plant. So,
I think some of the thoughts around it was, if we're already having to build a whole new plant and everything, that would be the prime opportunity to look at some of those alternatives to keep costs down to the residents.
all right, yeah.
Yeah, we gotta
We'll make
explore
sure
it.
that's on the agenda for conversation.
Okay.
Right.
Karen, did you have any?
I attended the EMA Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting, which I hadn't reported out on yet. We did give the authority to form a citizens advisory group regarding groundwater sustainability. Mix of the public, vintners, ranchers, residents. Mary Me is now the chairman, and Jeff Clay is the vice chair. And let's see, I attended on behalf of the city, I was asked to attend on behalf of the city, the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition fundraiser, which I did last weekend. Weekend before last. Basically, it was SBCAG members that were there and the general public supporting bicycle master plans, and they announced that Solvang had a couple workshops and gave an update on that.
And I had a SB-CAG and APCD meeting, pretty general topics. One of the things they're going through is their budgeting process. Other than that, didn't have any real other meetings there. Robert, did you have any? I think you already, okay.
It's the PASO meeting.
Okay, so I think with that, move on to council comments and requests. Who would like to start?
Make it brief.
Really? Nobody?
No.
I'm ready.
We've still got another meeting to get to as well tonight. No, I'm seeing him.
I have a couple of questions. A comment and a question. One, I was looking at the city manager's advanced calendar, and what I'm trying to figure out is how do we give priority to some of these, as we were discussing last meeting, where, for example, certain things we'd like to bring forward in the next 3 months, for example, as opposed to later in the year. For example, I think that I would like to bring this amnesty program, this discussion about giving amnesty to the permitting penalties, as Robert had described and discussed.
Permits.
I'd like to bring that forward for discussion.
That's part of our retreat.
Yeah, it's, council's direction at the last meeting where we were talking about the future agenda item was to bring it back for prioritization at the retreat.
Right.
So you can do that with all these then?
Yeah, so we'll go through that. I mean, and the treat will also generate a lot of future agenda items there.
All right. Okay. And then I'm not sure, one of the things I'd like to see is that this council express itself individually, obviously, through the local papers and blogs, whatever is possible, and hopefully even through our own website eventually when we get it up and running. I spoke to some people and they suggested that perhaps we look into something like a council's corner in the newspapers so that we have an opportunity as council members to comment on something that happened at the meeting or discuss one of the visions that we want to promote and express to the community our position on a particular issue. I think that the cost would be minimal or nominal, and the value to the community would be would more than justify the cost. Do we discuss that here, or do you want to discuss that? I'm sorry. Do you want to discuss that in a regular meeting, or do you want to do this at the retreat?
I'm still kind of trying to understand what you're.
Great idea. Fantastic idea.
So do we need more time to discuss it?
Yeah, I think at the retreat we can talk about
Yeah.
possibly implementing that into
Yeah.
sharing our goals with the community.
I really like this idea. I was talking to.
Highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's kind of like one of my ideas was almost like a quarterly newsletter or some kind of public page like Facebook or something that basically has the items coming up throughout the city and kind of an ability to keep people informed of what's going on and the reasons why certain things are happening, or,
Right.
Is that kind of what you're?
Well, exactly. So sometimes you'll see things in the newspaper and you'll say, that's not what I meant to say, or it was, written down in a way that you thought, well, I could have said that better, or I could explain that a little bit better, but there's no time or place to do it. So if we had a dedicated space in the newspaper or newspapers, then each one of us, or just one, doesn't matter, would be able to have, go ahead and express themselves.
Yeah. So I think
I'd be happy to talk about that at the meeting.
I think at the retreat that'd be appropriate there. Karen,
I have no comments.
no comments. For myself, let's see. I went to besides the League of California City quarterly dinner, went to the Chamber Summit. Great event. Lots of public engagement there and ideas regarding the overall kind of vision and or economic ideas around solving with that study that the Chamber's working on. I also went to a collab event at the Chumash Casino. It was a huge event. A lot of people there, a lot of people from Santa Barbara up north and local. So that was a nice event. And then I also went to the Visit SYV. I believe it was their, David, you were there too. Was that their annual, was it an annual or a semi-annual kind of event, the Visit SYV at Grassini Vineyards?
Yeah, I think that was their winter or maybe spring.
Spring
I forget the
kiffoff
exact-
or
yeah, something.
I'll call
something
it
along
Visit
those lines,
SYV
yeah.
spring
One-
kickoff.
one of their annual events.
Okay.
But it was like 45 degrees.
It did get a little windy. And then we also had the Mayor's Ride, which was great. Last year, I forget what the number was, but I think it was 20 or so people that showed up for the Mayor's Ride. This year, we had a little over 100 people show up, I think 80 of which were Dunn School students. And we had great council representation there. Chris was there, Karen was there, and then myself. And then we also had the what was mentioned earlier, the bicycle summit that was ran by Joan Hartman that focused on the benefits of alternative transportation in the city, bicycle tourism and things like that. Those are my comments for the night. Robert?
No.
No comment? Daniel?
No, just the only thing was kind of piggybacking on what City Manager David was saying about the budget. We've met a couple times regarding the budget, and we're moving forward with that, and it looks fantastic. It's going to be great. So as much as budgets can be great, I guess, but it's moving forward nicely.
And kudos to Xenia for putting in a lot of hard work. I know to step into something like that and you know what I mean, turn the whole process around, that's a lot. So thank you. With that, we need to go back into closed session. I believe we need to do a readout.
Because the special meeting was already done, you don't need to do a readout on the first two, but for the second item, you do have to do the readout, and that'd be pursuant to Government Code Section 54.956.8, the City Council meeting closed session with its designated labor negotiator regarding Teamsters Local 926. The designated negotiator will be the city manager.
All right. With that, we're in closed session.